Declare us back as the Board of Equalization. Shannon.
Good morning. So this morning we start the assessment appeals. We've got morning scheduled here. You'll see a couple of them when we get to it. The property owner, we don't expect to show up. We heard that last minute that they probably won't come in. But there's only a couple of those. We've got two properties that are represented by tax reps that are out of state. They're going to call in, so there'll be two phone calls that Joan is working on. Otherwise, we're going through the morning. Our schedule so far is this morning, and on the 20th, we've got most of the day filled. And we're waiting on 25 to 30 that we don't know if they're going to want an appointment or not. So still, we don't know if we're going to go into the next day after the 20th. We are estimating, just a guess, around 350 appeals this year. Now, not all of those are going to want an appointment before the board. You're only hearing those that want to appear before the board. But there are a lot more appeals, and we will get to those that aren't going to appeal. We'll have a recommendation for you to either change or not change the assessment. We haven't done those yet. And then, as always, staff in my office deals with phone calls and people coming into the office that never result in an appeal. So we can say we've probably talked to well over 700 people in the last couple of months. And you're going to hear from not very many of those that want to show up and appear before the board. But we're starting this morning. Unless there's any questions, go to the first appeal.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Oskinek.
Shannon, how many folks understand that their property assessments went up because we got a pretty crazy market out there? And do they understand that at all?
I think so. And the reason I say that is I wouldn't say this is a slow year for appeals, because in Pennington County, we're always busy this time of year with appeals. But this is one of the slower years we have for a number of appeals, even though it's by far the largest increases in assessments that we've had since I've been here. Normally, our market goes up 3, 4, maybe 5% a year, and assessed values will be something similar to that. This year, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40% in some locations, very significant increases in assessments this year because of our real estate market. But yet we had less appeals than we've had in normal market years. And I think that's just because everybody knows what's going on. It's all over the news. I have spent a lot of time appearing before different groups, putting out publications, talking about how your assessment goes up and how that affects the taxes, as well as what we see going on in the market. Realtors are doing the same thing. There isn't anybody out there that doesn't know what's happened in our real estate market in the last year or two.
And I think once people understood that, the assessment goes up and we can only increase our budget by 3% plus growth, then the mill levy's got to go down. So it's not, don't panic until you actually see your real estate taxes. But you put a lot of good information out there, and that really helped a lot of people understand. And
I think it did, yeah.
Help put some fires out.
Yeah, yep. So it's sort of surprising that big increases in assessments and not as many appeals as we've had in other years. But I think that's from the information that's out there from all different sources.
So my last question would be, how many people actually come to your office and get this resolved and as a result don't have to be here?
Okay, so what I said earlier, we have guessing because we haven't counted them, but I did a rough count. And I'm thinking 300 to 350 appeals that you will act on. But most of those, we have met with the property owner, looked at the property, and gone over sales information And if there's something wrong, we will make a recommendation to you, and if the property owner is happy with that, they won't show up. If they're unhappy but still don't want to show up, we'll still have a recommendation to you. So all of those people won't be here. So we've got, let's say, maybe 30 and 45, let's say we'll have 50 appeals that are going to show up before you out of 300, 350. And then we can double that, the number of people that come in and sit down and talk to somebody in our office that don't even file an appeal.
Sure. Thank you.
I think we're ready to move forward.
Okay, the first property owner is Joseph, and I'm not sure how to pronounce Douglas, and Dawn from my office. Are you Joe?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Go ahead, Don.
Do you want me to go first this morning?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Hand out for you.
And you're done.
Thanks, Don.
Yes. All right. Don Puckett, Staff Appraiser for Pennington County Equalization. This is appeal of parcel 58724, owner Joseph DeLugos. I have a value recommendation on this parcel of $365,400. The property is located on 6.62 acres in the Spring Creek Acres subdivision south of Rapid City, east of Highway 79. It is improved with a 1,248 square foot ranch-style home built in 2010, and also has a 720 square foot detached garage. The home is 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and has a finished basement. Initially visiting with Mr. DeLugos, his concern appeared to be in the land value. And in my handouts, after the board document, is a spreadsheet entitled DeLugos Land Values. I shared these values with Mr. DeLugos when I did an on-site review of the property. The top part of that lists comparable sales taken from this same area of the subject. And it illustrates, if you look at the sale price and the sale price per acre, that the land valuation is not over what we are currently seeing in the market. A little further down, I have a note where I have extracted the land value from the recent sale of the subject. This method produced a value of $80,700 for the land. The current assessment on the land is $63,100, and that is about $12,200 per acre on that. It does not appear with either of these analyses that the land portion of the assessment is over the current market. My next handout is a comparable sales report. The first comparable is the sale of the subject property itself, occurring in June of 2021 for $383,000. The other two sales are from within the same subdivision as the subject. The properties are highly comparable to the subject in year built, total living area, basement finish area, and garage. The lot sizes are a bit larger, and comparable 3 has an additional outbuilding. They sold for $430,000 in October of 21 and $379,000 in October of 2020. I'd like to further note on this comparable sales report that the 3 valuations that we calculate for the property are well within a tight range of each other, less than 5%, with the cost value being $365,400, the market coming in at 367,700, and the value indicated by the three specific comparables at 384,000. An additional concern of Mr. DeLugos's was the percentage change for his property from the neighbors around him. And that is my third handout. This is some information that Mr. DeLugos and I had gone through, and so I wanted to illustrate it for you. The percentage change from the 2021 to the 2022 assessment is listed on the various parcels right in the cul-de-sac there where the subject property is located. A specific percentage of change is not the goal of property assessment. Accurate data and market value is. There is no formula for calculating a percentage change for each property. Percentage change is just a result of the assessment process comparing this year's value to last year's value. Percent change is impacted by the various tasks that we do in the office throughout the year. The neighborhood where the subject property is located specifically is from the south edge of Rapid City down to the Custer County line as you head towards Hermosa. It contains 144 parcels. The median increase in this neighborhood for 2022 was 66%. This is a large increase. A lot of the parcels, or not a lot, but a portion of the parcels in this neighborhood are just bare land. And there was a significant increase to the land values in this neighborhood, and that's why that percentage increase looks so large. Percentage change in land values can further impact the percentage change of properties overall. Example, in this neighborhood, land acreage is less than 10 have a different value than land acreages over 10. And I'm seeing this in the sales where larger parcels are selling for more. So when land values were increased this year, the percentage increase on parcels larger than 10 acres was greater than the percentage of increase on land value below 10 acres. This makes sense when you note that this area appears to be transitioning from large agricultural properties to more smaller, more rural residential properties. Also impacting the percent change in the valuation is the cost estimates for the structures, which vary based on the individual characteristics of the properties, and also what current material costs are. Another is the individual characteristics of the comparable sales that are used to determine values. Sales vary from year to year. Valuation changes for outbuildings and other improvements also impact valuations. An example is with all of the outbuildings this year, we addressed some depreciation concerns. And so properties that had outbuildings would have had a different percentage change than structures that did not have outbuildings. And this change was a countywide thing. It wasn't just in this neighborhood. Overall, work done inter-office throughout the year impacts assessed values. Data corrections and updates made through reappraisal, building permits, sales verification, sales ratio studies, interviews with taxpayers, and so on, impacts the overall percent change of valuation. Specific to this property, there was a sales verification was done, and data updates were made. There was adjustment to the depreciation on the detached garage, and there is also a shed on this property that would have been considered in that as well. There was an increase to the land value, and further noted, the sale of this property is also used in the analysis in our sales ratio studies and in the market model, which assists us in determining the market value of the properties and other properties in this area. In conclusion, I'd like to ask the board to uphold my value recommendation of $365,400. That breaks down into $63,100 for the land and $302,300 for the structure.
Okay, any questions of Dawn before we?
Mr. Chairman. I do, if you
ask
don't.
her?
Don, question on your comps here. You got subject and you got comp one. That's the exact same property. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I'm reading the documents correct.
Yes, correct.
And it was bought in 2015 for 383,000.
It was purchased in June of 2021.
Okay, for 383. For 383.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and the current, and I just want to make sure my math and I'm looking at everything right, make sure I'm not double seeing anything. But the value that you're giving to it is less than what it was purchased for in 2021.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Askinen.
So Don, was comp number one, was that a fair market value or arm's length? I mean, neither the buyer or seller wanted the rest, so I assume that one in your database is a good sale that we could use for other.
Yes. When I was on site prior to the purchase, I visited with the seller, and he had told me they had just accepted an offer on the property. The property had been listed for approximately 2 months. It appears they got just slightly less than their asking price for it. 2 months in the current market is a reasonable exposure time.
Well, in the appraisal world, I'd probably look at the last sale of the property being the best sale of the, for the best comp, and probably wouldn't deviate much from the last sale price.
Any other questions of Dawn? Dr. DeLucas?
Yes,
Jared.
good morning. Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to be with you today. I also have a handout if I may.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
So I come today asking for what I would consider a reasonable, modest adjustment. I see that the value recommendation is 365,400. My recommendation would be 351,437, and that is based on two reasonings. The first one is what I consider to be a noticeable disproportionate increase in the percentage increase compared to the rest of my neighborhood. And I can go over that, including comparable properties that Ms. Puckett has shared with us this morning, as well as my own private appraisal that I have. The second would be what I consider miscalculation of the land sales when compared to others in my neighborhood. And I'll kind of go through the sheet here. So one of the last times I spoke with Ms. Puckett on the phone, we went through other in my neighborhood on my street, and then one on Dewey Lane, which is one street over, other percent increases. And those are listed there in a chart. The average was 23.92. I did pull one, and I don't have the exact address, but it's on the sheet that Ms. Puckett gave that was 65.4% increase from last year to this year. So you might see that. I did pull that because, as any good statistician, we have to recognize outliers. And on the phone with Ms. Puckett, she even said, that doesn't look right. I need to check into that. So I did pull that one. The rest are all very tightly, as you can see, 19, 22, 21 for an average of 23.92, where my original increase was over 30%. So of course, I think as a reasonable person, reasonable landowner is going to see something doesn't look right. Let me look into that. Again, my request is now that I just be equal with my neighbors at 23.92% increase. I recognize that prices are going up and I want to pay my fair share, but I expect it to be fair and not over 30%. There's been zero improvements on the property since I purchased it in 2021. I've asked both Mrs. Puckett and Director Rittberger if they could tell me exactly what about my home caused it to be 30% more. And the only answer I've gotten so far is that it's based on market value. I did a land survey just about 2 months ago and found that a livestock fence around the 6.6 acres is actually incorrect. It's over 70 feet onto one of my neighbor's lawns property. So I do need to have that fixed. I've already got a quote on that was over $2,000. We need to fix that. According to Director Rittberger's presentation to the commissioners on March 15th, only 9% of the properties in Pennington County saw an increase of 25 to 30%. Again, mine was originally over 30%. So the data isn't aggregated further than that in his presentation, but again, I think it's disproportionate if only 9% and then I'm at the far extreme of that. My request of adjustment of 23.92 is still higher than what 77% of properties in Pennington County saw, according to when I calculate that out. Again, I'm arguing that that my request is fair here. Also, according to that presentation on March 15th, Federal Housing Finance Agency calculated a 20.1% increase in properties across all of South Dakota. My request is still higher than that. I noticed in Codified Law 10-6-122, there's a coefficient of dispersion maximum in the state of South Dakota that may not be more than 25%. To me, that means that the lawmakers, legislators have found it important that anything over 25% needs to be corralled in. Only a 10% increase in real property value from the one property in Pennington County that was listed in the comparable sales that I include on page 2 of my sheet there. This was from a appraisal that I had done when I purchased the house. So there's 3 comparable sales. Only one was in Pennington County, unfortunately, because I have a Hermosa address so close to Custer. And that only saw a 10% increase. Again, that's a comparable home sale. The 2 reports from the Department of Equalization that we just heard about this morning, one had a 22.12% increase, the other had an 18.8% increase. Both are lower than what I am requesting. Is that reasonable adjustment? We'll also add on the comparable sales. I know the home sale prices are higher than what I'm requesting, but on comparable number 2, they have a large finished patio with an outdoor fireplace. They have a finished chicken coop, which we didn't hear about in Mrs. Puckett's presentation. They also have a very large outbuilding, which my property does not have an outbuilding. Comparable 3 from the Department of Equalization has central air conditioning, has a 3-car garage attached. Mine is only 2-car detached. And they also have a very large outbuilding. So all these things, I think, will increase the sale price of the home. So those are my that's my data for the percentage increase, and I also wanted to share a little bit about the land values. So on page 3 of my handout, I have a home that's 3 lots down from mine on Tiffany Court. Very comparable in size, 6.16 acres, mine is 6.6. And as you can see from my photos here, it's very flat, very usable land. And their valuation right now is $10,097 per acre. Same story on page 4. This property is 2 lots down from mine on Tiffany Court. Again, very flat, $7,467 per acre, which is actually over $2,000 less per acre than what I'm paying. And the photos on the final page, page 5, I took on my property, you will see the severe steep grade. It's unusable land without me spending lots of money to have an engineer out there, an excavating company to make it usable. And I am paying $9,532 per acre, which is just not consistent with what my neighbors are paying for their flat, usable land that they can have large outbuildings on, that they can have livestock safely. I think that's about it. So again, my 2 main concerns, the disproportionate increase of percentage compared to my neighborhood and the miscalculation of the land given the steep, unusable nature of it. And my request is that it's less than $14,000 is what my concern is. I think I should have an increase of 23.92, exactly equal to the average in my neighborhood, for a total assessment value of $351,437. Thank you so much.
Questions, Dr. DeLucas?
Don, would you put up that grid for everybody to see on your 3 sales?
Can you bring up the sales grid, Deb? One of the things about the sales that I'd like to address on what he said was the outbuilding on Comp 2 was built after the sale. So that one had a building permit. So the change on that property, the presence of the outbuilding was not there
There.
at the sale.
So can everybody see this? Oh, so is it Joseph?
Yes, sir.
Joseph,
Oh, we got it on.
of the three sales up there, comp one, comp two, comp three, in your opinion, which one would be most reflective of your property?
Well, Comp 2 and Comp 3, like I shared, they have features and the size and the finishes that are far beyond what my property is. So I understand that it's probably difficult to find comparable properties in a rural setting out in the county, but I don't know that these are, if you're just looking at sale prices, it's, in my opinion, it's not consistent with my property. But Comp 1, my property would probably be the closest.
And so I guess my question is, why don't you feel that your property is worth the same amount the day that you bought it? You weren't under duress. The seller wasn't under duress. It was considered an arm's length transaction. Why do you feel that your property is worth less than the day that you bought it?
Sure. So it was purchased this summer at the start of the height of a interesting real estate market. I was living with my wife on the East Coast in North Carolina and accepted a job offer for here. And I was told that this was on April 13th, exactly a year ago, and the start date was June 22nd. Called a realtor that week after I accepted the job, and I was told appraisals are taking 60 to 75 days. So if you want to have a place to stay, if you don't want to be staying in a hotel, you need to decide quick.
So with that being said, if I did my math right, Don's recommending a decrease of 4.5% from the price that you paid, which I think is very fair in myself.
But with all due respect, I wasn't finished, Commissioner.
What's that?
I wasn't finished with answering your question. So we, I wouldn't classify it as duress, but there was a time crunch. We needed to purchase a house within a week from North Carolina. And originally, my wife and I offered $350,000 on this property. The realtor came back and said, I talked to the seller's realtor. They've already declined the first three offers. I don't think this is smart. So we came back and we offered 380, and they accepted 383. I firmly believe that I paid too much for the property, but I was in a situation where I got my dream job. I wanted to be here, and there was 20. The realtor told us there was anywhere from 25 to 30 houses on the market per week at that time. I certainly didn't want to stay in a hotel while I hassled with sellers. So yes, I do believe I overpaid, but unfortunately, it's just the situation.
So did you fill out a certificate of value? Because when you fill those out, they normally ask you a number of questions. So the Director of Equalization can take into consideration if that should be a sale that they want to put in their database. So did you fill that certificate out?
No, sir, I wasn't given that opportunity.
I actually have a copy of it. And it's kind of weird because the first two pages appear to be filled out by the seller.
Okay.
And then there is a copy of the second page that is signed by the buyer.
So Don, you have subject and then you have comp one. Isn't subject and comp one the same?
Correct.
So you
Correct.
have market value 367.7 on one and 355.3 on the other.
Okay.
Because you have subject and then you have comp.
Okay. The difference between those two valuations, because these are the comparables, is the time adjustment that is made to the comparable subject to make it similar to the subject property as of November 1st.
Okay.
So those numbers do appear a little bit different on the grid, yes.
So tell me time crunch or time. So subject and comp, what was the difference on the time that you had changed the market value just because the market value had changed
Correct.
in that time?
So the $383,000 sale price was adjusted 5 months to be November 1st, predicting a value of 395, 362.
Okay, so you have 367.7 and you have 355.3 on market average MRA on subject and comp one. Did you see that?
Yes, yes.
That's what I'm talking about. So tell me why that changed market value. Like I said, is the date, 2/20/21 in, on the 367, and then, 3/4/22 for the 355/3, or is it the opposite? Does that make sense for market average? Isn't it market value or market average for those properties?
Yeah. Um,
Maybe I'm
I,
confused.
I guess I don't have a good explanation, other than what I just gave you. That market average looks different from the market average of the subject property because of the time adjustment.
And I appreciate Commissioner Roskine's explanation, but I also believe that he paid too much for the property at 383. I mean, that's his fault. We already know that kind of thing. But I also know the market's not going to stay this forever. And to make it fair market value, and looking at the other comps, I don't think the 355/3 is a bad number. That's in his 23.9. That also raises it. It's in the fair market value. Like I said, I don't think all these properties, just because we raise them, are going to stay there. They might for this year or whatever until they decide that the market is flooded, but I'm not ready to raise everybody's rates 25 to 30% right now, on some of these properties. So,
Deb? Oh, sorry, Jenna, go ahead.
May I respond to
Go ahead.
that?
Yeah.
Our assessment date is November 1st, last November 1st.
right,
We're not assessing at a future date when the market might go down.
right. I know.
It's
You're going
market
to keep.
value as of last November 1st.
I know you're going to tell me that, Shannon, but I still think us raising to a certain percentage.
Another reason why that might be slightly off is because I did go out and do an on-site review of the property, and I did make a couple data changes. So if you look at the basement finish area of the property, on the subject, it's 1130. For the comparable, it was 1,200 square feet. So there was that adjustment there. And that could impact that number too. But I don't know how much it could impact that number, but
But you look at the basement, you look at the deck. Remember the things that actually add more value to it. The deck on his is 880 open. You have deck 320, 440 on your comparables. Your basement is lower on his. Just, and for some reason the basement's, maybe it's got more finish, but that's changed a little bit on the number. I think those are some pretty big comparables between a 320 deck open, 412 open. Those are,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, if we just ignore the first comparable, the two comparables do bracket the value that I'm recommending very well.
right. But then when you have it on comp, you have it 355/3. And then below it, you have adjusted sale price 395, 362. So,
Yeah.
and then you have the other ones at 386 and 388. And like I said, they have more basement. One has less, but they have a bigger deck.
Commissioner LaCroy.
So,
Thank you. Thank you. Joseph, I tend to agree with Don on this, and the reason why I do is the story that you just told us. Yes, you feel like you overpaid. Let me tell you, I just bought a property last year, and I overpaid. It went up 60%. And that's what the market was. And I put in bids just like you on properties and had to go above and beyond. But on the same time, you had to hire an appraiser to come out and appraise that property for the value that you paid for it at that time. Otherwise, the bank's not going to accept it. So at the time, I'm sure your appraisal came back of what your bid was.
Mr. Chairman, if I can respond.
Please do.
Yeah. Actually, in Mrs. Puckett's office, she told me one day I hope that the appraising business, they will actually use real values instead of feeling pressured to meet the sale price. So that's the statement from an employee in the Department of Equalization. So I
Besides,
think we all realize that it's not on the up and up. They're doing things that they have to just to get sales to go through.
I tend to disagree and agree. Banks are in the business to make money, not lose money. So if it's not that value, they're not going to lose it. You have an appraiser up here. I bought in several properties and heavily rely on those appraisals to come back and they're non-biased. I can't talk to the appraisers before they come. So it's that type of thing. But my point is you knew it was a hot market and you had to go above and beyond what you felt it is. And I really don't see that any of the other values around you and the comps are comparable, and that I'm sure you listened to Shannon's deal about our taxes are 3%. I'm almost agreeing with some of the values with the land stuff that you're arguing, but once I heard the comp that, you knew what you were paying for, we've had several people that, I think we had one property over in Champa that someone bought unseen and paid way more than what you did, and their value was lower and they were mad, the value of the property, just to share that with you. But I think she did a fair job with you. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Roskinek.
I just want to point out that you paid 383. Don's recommended assessed value is 365.4, so that's 17,600 less. I would hope that that would take into account some of your concerns, because I think that number is good myself.
369.3.
Commissioner Lassiter.
Couple questions, Don, if you don't mind. And Joseph, in his handout he gave to us, he said that coefficient of dispersion, maximum 25%. Can you kind of go over that so that we understand what that means?
All right, so I don't have the law in front of me, so I'm going to do my best here. Maybe Shannon can let me know if I'm wrong. That applies to when we do our sales ratio studies for the county. We calculate a median, we calculate standard deviation, coefficient of dispersion, all those things. And we have guidelines with, once we do those analysis on our sales that we have to meet, and that's one of those guidelines.
Pennington County's COD is about 12%. The law requires that we be less than 25 or 25 or less. We've never been anywhere near 25. 25 is pretty high. Our COD tends to run between 10 and 12% every year.
Thank you. Follow up, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And Joseph, I'll tell you this, I'm actually looking for a house in the market right now. I've been looking down in your area because I'm looking for acreage, and I've chosen not to buy because of the price of the market is driving. So some of that pricing that's in the market right now, it's a crazy market. But if those who are looking to buy stop buying whenever, people are taking advantage of the market, it'll help bring the prices down. But my secondary comment to that is I do think, I understand you bought it high, the value is coming down low. I feel closer that it's better for you that it's coming down. I don't necessarily agree that the land value moving forward should be right what it is for that area, but that's how the market is moving, and you could probably sell it for a pretty decent price still, if I'm reading the market as it is. But that's what I can offer to you. Sorry.
Chairman,
Commissioner Adcock.
so you paid 383, what did it appraise at, Joseph?
385.
Okay, so you did, you bought it at, it was appraised at 385 when you bought it, or you had it appraised after you bought it?
No, I had it appraised through the mortgage company. The sale price was 385. The appraisal came through exactly at 385, which I think further emphasizes what I shared with Commissioner LaCroix, that it's not necessarily, appraisers are not necessarily the most exact profession.
Okay,
But it was throughout the purchase.
so if you took, remember, basically the land would be 10,000 each, like the other people paid on average. Remember you guys said he paid 12,000 per acre, Don, instead of 10?
Yes, that's what I extracted out of the sale, 12,200 per acre.
And Joseph, didn't you say something about that most of the people around there, when they paid about 10,000 an acre on average?
No, so, and I'm not sure why we're considering that piece of data. That piece of data is just straight land prices in that area. I don't think we should compare apples to oranges. My property has 6.6 acres of land, yes, but there's a home on it. So the examples that I gave you in my packet, I think that's more comparing apples to apples. I don't see how getting a land price with no property on it is equivalent to just land price. And as you can see from my page, here, 4 and 5, I'm paying $2,000 more per acre than 14562 Tiffany, which is very flat, very usable. So I don't know if that answers your question, Commissioner.
Yes, that, I guess that's what I was thinking, because you said yours had a different topography and stuff than the land that was worth 12,000.
Correct.
And you wouldn't be able, I mean, you could build on anything, but most people are gonna buy that $12,000 land. So I guess for me, even on the acreage, it would bring it down comparable to what he was saying, just because of land value, so.
Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Commissioner LaCroy.
I'd move to approve the 369, 300, the recommendation from the Board of Equalization, or Equalization Office down budget.
It's 365.4.
The 365.4, is that the equalization director or the equalization office
I got
recommendation?
It's right in the bottom of your page, Lloyd.
the bottom of this one,
Yep.
365.4, is that what you're recommending? Don?
Yes, it's broke down on that first page of the board document.
Okay,
Director
so-
of Equalization recommendation, 365.4, 63.1 on land, 3023 on structure.
Mr. Chair,
That'd be my motion.
Got a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No,
A motion,
There's two. Deb and I said no.
okay, 3-2. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Chelsea Willett. I am with the Department of Equalization as a staff appraiser, here to talk about tax ID number 49971. She will not, Ms. Frederick will not be here today. We're just going to do a recommendation. So current recommendation is going to be for $598,200 with land value at $60,000 and a structure value of $538,200.
Move for approval.
second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Good morning.
I'm Shannon Champion from the Director of Equalization Office. And today we are here to discuss three properties, three parcels that are located 5 miles out Nemo Road, or approximately 10 miles out Nemo Road. This is owned by a Ray Charles Sr., and they are looking for agricultural status. They do own 5 parcels out here that equal 28.8 acres. They are only looking for ag status on 23.32. In our codified law, 10-6-112, 2 of the 3 criteria must be met to qualify for agricultural status. The first one is a mandatory criteria to be met, which is principal use, which is going to be the primary use of the land. The second and third is an either or. You can either meet on acreage, which is a minimum of 40 acres in our county, or income, which is a minimum of $2,500 in 3 of the past 5 years. Mr. Ray does have a stewardship plan in place, as well as being a member of American Tree Farm System and South Dakota Apiary, and has provided the county with copies of Schedule Fs to provide the criteria to meet that, the income, or the criteria 1 for primary use. The income criteria is what we will need to be addressed due to not meeting that acreage. The annual gross income of at least $2,500 in 3 of the previous 5 years, is what we're gonna be looking at today. With the documentation provided, the minimum income has only been met in 2020. After assessing or 2021.
Thank you.
After assessing the current law for the qualification of agricultural status and looking at the application with the supporting documents provided on these properties, I do recommend no change in classification due to not meeting the second criteria required by the law of annual income, with his being less than $2,500 in the last 3 of 5 years.
So Shannon, do you have a copy of that law that states that,
I'm sorry, wrong Shannon. When I heard my name, I stood up.
Sorry.
I apologize.
oh, do you have the statute that now says that 3 of the past 5 years?
I do. I have a copy here. I do not have a copy for you.
Can you read it directly to us?
Okay, so in addition, to be classified as agricultural land for tax purposes, the land must meet one of the following criteria. The first one being, in 3 of the previous 5 years, an annual gross income of at least $2,500 is derived from the pursuit of agricultural from the land, excluding transactions between, when it goes into, like between individuals shared in the household and
And that law went into effect when?
July 1st, 21.
Okay. So in talking with legislators relative to that law, legislators that I've spoken to, including the sponsor of it, indicate to me that the intent was not to go back on that, but it established as of July 1, 2021, that it had to be $2,500 and would have to continue to be that for each year forthcoming. There was a different formula that was used prior to that time of what that income needed to be. So I'm not, I guess I don't agree with the fact that you can use that criteria of saying 3 of the last 5 years.
That's just what it states, previous 5 years.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Roskinek.
so there's 3 parcels out on Nemo Road. What's the total area of the 3 parcels?
The ones that he is appealing are 23.32
All 3 together?
together.
Total is 28.8 for all of them.
All 5 that they own, they're only appealing
28.8, okay.
the 23.32.
And it's an income producing tree farm, correct?
So Chairman,
Commissioner Hadcock.
if we did ag on the 23.32 and the rest were assessed according to what they're supposed to be, what would that end up making that property for assessments, Ms. Shannon?
The ag part or the non-ag part?
The 23.2 would be ag, what would that be? And then there'd be what, I don't know how much left. How much land is left after that?
4.5.
About 6 acres.
About 6 acres.
It's okay for me to answer.
Then what would the assessment be on 23.2 as ag and 6 acres as regular?
On
5.58. Sorry, it was 5.58 acres.
5.58, thank you. Why I say this is because also I met with Mr. Ray, and I believe he has met that criteria, and I'm in the same agreement as Mr. Drews, that we had made this criteria, and then I think a lot of people thought we had changed it, and so he was working towards this. He did his 2,500, and did what he was supposed to do, and then now we're saying, okay, that can't be ag till after this time because of July 1st last year. He has to wait for another year. If he hadn't already been working towards and would have achieved that until they decided supposedly that they were changed it, but according to Mr. Drews, it wasn't the intent. It was the intent to actually keep moving it forward and still be able to use that status in the future. So for me, that's why I said I believe the 23.32 5.32 should be ag, and the 5.58 should be assessed accordingly on your assessment, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman.
So,
Commissioner LaCroy.
So the information I'm gathering here, Miss Shannon, is, I think the board wants to do the 23.2 at ag, and I would, take a offer for a motion if, the wording, if you have one, or Deb has one, to be able to do that. Do we need the exact numbers? Normally, we need the numbers to do it. Or can we just approve the 23.2, make a motion to approve the 23,
32.
or 32.2
23.32, sir.
to ag?
Oh, yeah.
I want to do it proper. I don't want to be illegal like yesterday.
Yeah. We like being illegal.
Three different ID numbers, so we're gonna,
Move to change the classification to ag, and then we put whatever number the ag value is later.
Right.
okay, move to change the classification on all three ID numbers? Because I
Yes.
have three different ID
Yeah,
numbers.
that's what it is.
So the motion is, if I could, 23.32 as ag, 5.5 acres as
5.48.
5.4 acres.
So you're making the motion?
Yes, that'd be my
Did
motion.
someone
Second.
I'm still,
Sorry.
Okay.
did you guys come up with something?
Well, it's just changing the classification and the value will be derived from the soils that I pulled.
So
So me and Shannon or Shannon, geez, everybody's Shannon today. Travis. Sorry,
Hi, Shannon.
Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
So the motion was the 23.32 as ag and the 5.54 acres as regular.
I thought it was 30.
That 5 acres is not appealed, so it's
Right.
non-ag, it'll stay non-ag.
Okay.
Well, and if I can speak at
Yes,
this
you
point in time.
you certainly
Is-
may.
Is that okay? I
Sorry,
didn't want
Mr.
to
Vic.
interrupt. Thank you. I really appreciate this. Thanks for letting me speak here. My family's been on this land since 1947. It's where my heart is. Forgive me for getting a little bit emotional all of a sudden. My mom, Gwen, is here. My dad couldn't make it. He has Parkinson's disease and has a cold today. But we're proud of the work we've done for the last 3 years to establish this farm. We're proud of the products we're selling, our honey, our beautiful blue pine timber, the live edge. We got a piece of blue pine timber that's right now downtown in one of the buildings in Rapid City. And so we've been happy with the progress we've been able to make on this farm in the last 3 years. And so I really appreciate you considering us as ag. Now, when I made the appeal, I took out that 6-acre plot, about 6-acre plot around the house this last time, because I got freaked out. Because last spring, when I was talking to Mr. Rittenberg, he said, "Hey, I don't think your principal use." And this was after we'd put in 2 years of hard work. And I have an email from Mr. Durand, who's been excellent to work with, just a fantastic person, for those 2 years saying, "Hey, you're on track. You're going to be ag. You're going to be ag for the whole thing." The whole property is actually a tree farm, designated as a tree farm. That 6 acres down below, we take trees out of that farm, big, beautiful blue pine trees when they come in. Our bees, we've let that first part of the acreage grow long, and so in the summertime when you walk through it, it's full of bees. It's awesome. We've just this last fall, right along the edge of the cliff there, we put in mushrooms, gourmet mushrooms. We think in future years they're going to bring back some more value to our farm. So we're very excited about that. And so I actually think that there is an argument to be made that the 6 acres where the house sits is also principal use. It's an important part of our whole ag operation, and we're going to be gaining value off that 6 acres around where the house sits as well. And so if you would consider the whole place as a farm, which I think in other tree farms around the Black Hills there are probably many tree farms, many farms where there's a farmhouse and the land acreage around it is all ag. I'd hope that we could ask for that if you agree that this is ag and that we've established enough to be for ag.
So Chairman,
Commissioner Adcock.
just a question. So do we usually use their houses do we put the farm, or how about Joe might know this? Do we usually put the farm in the farmhouse and the acreage together as ag? Or do we use their house separate, like on their 5 acres? Usually they separate the 5 acres out and then they put the rest as ag.
Normally on a large ranch or farm type property, it isn't broken up like this within the different, what is our 5 parcels? And so that's really not an issue with that because the house is on 20 acres or whatever. And so it's just included within the property when it becomes ag. So
So
in
if we
this
put,
case, so the 3 parcels are the only 3 that are being appealed at this time, and perhaps the others could be addressed next year.
okay, so the house is not on this appeal. The
Correct.
5.54 is not on the appeal.
And I have an
Okay.
amendment here. Would be an updated appeal, which includes the house parcel and all of them, and the last 3 years of ag. So I could submit that today, but if it's too much of a change to do that, I don't have to. We can wait till next year.
I think,
But we-
Mr. Ray, we'll just do the 23.32 this year, and then next year if you don't want to.
I could submit that next year then, and show that we have some of the,
This is an ag application, which
Correct.
I can take
okay,
Okay.
for next year.
Yes.
Thank you.
So
And-
the motion, if I'm correct, then Shannon just needs to be, Miss Shannon, 23.32 for ag.
Yes.
On those 3, okay.
You made the motion, Commissioner LaCroix.
I
Who
did.
made the motion?
Deb made the motion.
Okay.
She jumped in and then Travis seconded.
Okay, now I understand. Was there a second to
Jumped
that
into my
motion?
question.
Last Travis did.
Okay, so I do have a motion and a second. And I'll ask you at this point in time then, Charles, are you okay with this and understand that you can come back next year and reapply for,
For the whole property.
Right.
Absolutely. Thank you. Happy to do that. Thank you all for your time.
okay. And I apologize, I told you I'd be out. Health issues got in the way, so I didn't make it.
No
But
worries.
I still look forward to coming out.
Thank you. Commissioner Lassiter did make it out, and each one of you have replied to my emails. Each one of you have been very great to work with. The Equalization Office has been fantastic to work with. Mr. Duran has been just amazing. So thank everybody here for that, and you're all welcome out anytime. We've got great honey. I'm going to have some mushrooms pretty soon. If you need some blue wood, we've got lots of that. So,
Thank you, sir.
So please come out and visit us anytime. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next appeal is properties represented by tax rep, and I think he's on Zoom.
So this would be Ray Browning on Zoom? Oh, it shows D. Smith.
Pennington should be.
Zoom that just has their phone number, they don't have their name on it, that might.
Okay, so please identify yourself that's on Zoom.
9 of these.
Daryl Smith.
Daryl Flynn?
Smith.
Daryl Smith.
Smith.
I believe if we want to look at the schedule, it would be Stone Ridge. So Mr. Smith is down the schedule a little bit. Stone Ridge should be Byron Pendleton as the tax rep. I don't know if he's on the phone.
So is Mr. Browning on the phone?
I believe it'll be Mr. Pendleton.
Pendleton?
Pendleton.
Representing the Stone Ridge development. Is there anybody on Zoom or on the phone representing the Stone Ridge development? Hearing none, I'll come back to you, Rod.
Well,
Whoever the other one is hung up now.
I would like to continue with Stone Ridge. I have the data for that. I have a handout for that.
Okay.
I don't know if we can get him on the line. I talked to him last night, and he said he would be on the line. So
Okay.
I have a handout for this property.
Okay.
Thank you, Rod.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rod.
Hello?
So are you representing Stone Ridge Development?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute and I had trouble getting off it. I heard you calling my name. I'm Byron. Hello?
Yeah, say your name again.
My name is Byron Pendleton with Savage and Browning.
Okay, and Rod, is this the person that
Yes.
you anticipated? Okay.
Okay.
We'll let Rod go ahead first, and then we'll come to you.
So I've handed out,
Thank you.
two handouts. The first is kind of a summary. The second is the result of our OHE hearing. It's the judge's ruling. This parcel is the Stone Ridge Development LLC. It's the mall that's just to the east of Walmart, Southside Walmart. There's actually 9 parcels that are being appealed. The mall itself is one of those, and then there are 8 additional bare land parcels that surround this. So these parcels, 8 of these, have been appealed the last couple of years. They've been through the county board twice. Our value was upheld in both of those. And it's been to the state level with a hearing examiner twice, and both of those times, the county's value was also upheld. So really, we're trying to find out what has really changed from those last 4 rulings. The only thing that we've changed year over year is the mall itself. When we went to OHE last year, it was not complete. We still had some suites that were what we call a shell finish. They hadn't had their very first tenant yet, which would add more finish. So our value from last year was with a higher vacancy and a percent complete, basically saying that the mall was not complete. And if you look at your second handout, which is the judge's ruling, findings of fact on the very first page, point number 6, that was really a very clean fact that we wanted to establish back then, that the values at that time were still lower than another parcel that was completely finished. So we established that fact last year. So the only change, if you look at your page 2 of the handout from the Board of Equalization, this is just a summary just to try to make it as simple as possible. And rather than going through every single parcel, I just have a summary page here that shows the year-over-year changes. Highlighted in yellow, you see the 2022 assessed value. And right next to that, a column that says difference from OHE decision. So everything that's 0% is our land values from all these outlots. Our land values have not changed in the last 2 years. They're the exact same values that we had when we went to the hearings. All of the decisions that this board has already ruled on, we haven't changed these land values. So we can go and do a deep dive into how I arrived at these land values, but we've been through this over multiple years, multiple boards. We have multiple decisions supporting our values. So I'm just going to leave that as it is without going into a deep discussion and relive all of that. We have new land sales that still support our value. My recommendation basically is to not change any of our values that I have, and I have the summary there. I think Byron's probably going to specifically talk about the mall itself. And so the way I want to address that is, like I've already said, the only change that we made is the mall is now more complete than it was last year. If you look at the very next page on the form that I created for Department of Equalization, this is my income analysis. I still did my due diligence. I ran a whole new income approach, a whole new cost approach. I got new sales just to make sure that everything was still good. The change that you'll see on the income approach is I changed my vacancy rate down to 10%, which is market, and it was 15% last year. All of the rents that I'm using are market rents. This is derived from the market, what is typical for this area, what is typical for malls. I'm using triple net leases. Everything that we do for all of our income analysis is market-based. We're not valuing the property specifically on their income. They may be higher than market, they may be lower than market. We have to use market income, market cap rates, market expenses. So what I'm listing here is my opinion of what the market rents would be, and the resulting value of that is actually higher than the value that went out. Our values that we send out are initially based on a cost analysis, and then it's backed up with income analysis and sales analysis. So when I recalculated a new income approach, that came out higher than what our assessment was. When I calculated a new sales approach with some new sales that we didn't have in 2020, that came out higher than our assessment. So I don't see any reason to change it. And like I said, we've had multiple rulings. We've been through this. So if there is something that I don't know from Mr. Pendleton that would cause this value to be any different, I'd be interested in hearing that. But there's just nothing that has persuaded me that our values are off.
Okay. If it's agreeable with the board, I suggest that we go to Mr. Pendleton first, and then just ask Rod to stay in place to answer any questions we may have of him also after Mr. Pendleton makes his appeal. Is that agreeable?
Yep.
Mr. Pendleton,
Thank you.
you may go ahead.
Yes. Did you guys get my evidence packet? It should have been about 23 pages.
I don't think that.
So I don't know if you.
I don't believe that I have it, and I don't see any other board members indicating they have it either.
Okay. Most of my evidence, we sent it in advance. I just, I was going to be referencing about income and expense sheets provided and whatnot, but I can verbally summarize. So this property, as Rod said, has multiple land parcels that surround an improvement, and the overall tax for this parcel for last year for the real estate portion was for the improvement portion was $89,000 in tax, and for just the vacant land alone was $122,000 in tax. The income from this property does not support the tax burden. This economic unit, now 100% occupied, grossed $496,000 last year, and with the net operating income is $210,000. The operating income from 2020 has only increased just nominally from a 2020 net operating income of $176,000 when it was previously had some more vacancy. The biggest issue here is not only the improvement, but the land parcels get valued at a premium rate for the first 1 acre of each parcel. And our ownership group owns 9 parcels contiguously all here. And basically we're getting penalized by, because we've separated these parcels by having a premium value to the first 43,560 square feet to each of these 9 parcels. That summarizes this, and Rod and I have gone back and forth kind of just over the last couple of years, as you said, and just the owners have a really tough time paying over $200,000 a year in real estate tax alone. Hello?
Yep, we're hearing you.
So I provided some comps, some comp sales of land. There's 1330 Catron Boulevard, 2718 Marlin Drive, 3637 Edward Street, 3980 Campbell. And those are all in the evidence packet. And we're basically requesting across the board on the value of the land here of applying an $8 a square foot to the first section, $3 to the second, and consistency for consistency purposes. Because if you look at the land cards here, we have different values for section 1, section 2, and section 3 land for each of these parcels, and it's just hard for the ownership to grasp why there's these inconsistencies.
I'd like to comment if I can, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Rod.
So what Mr. Pendleton is referring to is he used the term economic unit, and it is a term that we hear a lot. These outlots are all platted separately. They can all be sold separately. They're currently being marketed separately. But essentially, from what just previous conversations, he's asking that the land value be considered one large parcel, and there's a total of almost 40 acres. It's 37.96 total acres. If I were to value one single piece of land at 37.96 acres, that land value would be different than the aggregate of 9 individually platted. And so that's essentially what he's asking, is to have a more uniform value that considers an economic unit rather than individually platted land. Anybody that's done any investment into land knows that the land's not going to make you any money unless you sell it or put a building on it. These outlots have been bare for quite a while, so there's definitely going to be a heavy tax burden to have 8 outlots that are in prime area, ready to be developed, that are not being developed. If you're sitting on land that's valuable, it's not making you any money. And so I understand that. I have to create a value for each of these separately as they sit. There is difference in exposure, in accessibility, in visibility, in access to each one of those. So there's not a flat per square foot or a per acre to every single parcel. There's a lot of nuance to every piece. Some of them that you can see that are on the backside, they don't have the Catron exposure. There's some that have very good exposure to a lot more traffic with easier access, so there's no reason to have a consistent value across the whole thing.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Ross, can
I ask a couple questions?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so there's 9 parcels, but they're not individually marked up there, are they?
No, the map that you're looking at right now is just the outline of the mall itself.
Okay, so relative to that, how many acres is the mall itself?
10.97.
Okay, got it. So that's 477,853 square feet.
Sure.
With that being said, you did an appraisal on the mall or a valuation using the income approach.
I didn't do income on the land. I've only done income on.
I'm just talking about on your market income analysis. I'm looking at what you feel the value is of the mall itself and the 10.97 acres or whatever.
Yes.
And using the market income analysis, you're coming up with 4,592,000.
Correct.
And for safety mechanisms, you applied a 10% vacancy rate.
Yes.
And then you also deducted 51 cents a square foot for expenses.
Yes.
So you got an NOI of 429.39, and you capped it at 9.165%.
Yes.
That and that's very conservative because that number really should be about 7.5%.
Yeah,
So
it is a loaded cap rate, but yeah, it is a very conservative cap.
so that $134 a square foot, based on my experience and the stuff that I've done in the last couple of years, that's really in line with the what you're going to see per square foot when these multi-tenant buildings sell on a per square foot basis. They're anywhere from $110 to $150 a square foot in land and building. So I don't have a problem with that. Now we're getting into the other 8 outlots. The one on the corner of 5th and Catron Boulevard is currently listed for sale by Chris Long with Keller Williams. Do we know what they're asking per square foot on that? Because
On the bottom of the page where I have the summary, that is, they do have a, and I'm not sure if that's the exact one that you're referring to, but this is one of the land parcels that they are appealing. So at the very bottom of the page,
Ron,
yeah, I'm talking about the one right on the corner,
he's talking
Okay.
about the land he's
that
got
one
on there.
there. Is that
So-
one of the subject or,
I don't believe that's a subject.
Okay.
Or that's one of appeal, but just maybe to your point, the one that they are appealing, it's currently listed for $663,854. My current valuation is $550. So
What's the
it's,
number on that, Rod? The 64157 or 59? What number are you talking about for tax?
153.
What?
I think that's 153. 64153, that's the one.
64153. So right there, Rod.
what I'm trying to point out is on the bottom of the page, tax ID number 59896, the
Yeah.
very bottom of the page.
excuse me, Ron. So I was just curious, on a per unit basis, the one that we're talking about, the assessed value of that is what, how much per square foot?
I'm not sure which one we're talking about now. We've thrown a lot of tax numbers out
Okay.
there. You were asking me about one that was currently listed, and I don't
Right.
know if that's.
So I guess what I was curious is what the list price is per square foot and what our current assessed value is per square foot. I just wanted to see how that relationship is.
Okay.
I can tell you that I've done a lot.
And it looks like I'm looking. The listing, it looks like is for 663,000 for lot 14 Stumner Road. I'm just pulled it up too, and they've been asking this amount for over 1,300 days. Listing's been out here for years.
The listing is at $12
And
a
they've
square
had-
foot.
$12? Okay. And I totally agree with you. Each one of those lots, if I had to do an appraisal, I would have to do an appraisal on each lot because each lot it's got a tax ID number and actually it's against appraisal practice to appraise two of those together if each one can be sold separately. That's why you do your highest and best use analysis. They're going to bring more in the market individually than a group per se. And based on probably the most comparable land sales you're going to find would be up there where Hanny's did that, where they're doing all the work on Highway 16, the VA, the hospital, Security First Bank. Those are all $8 to $10 a square foot up there, and I would consider this location superior to Highway 16 because you got more infrastructure in this corner of 5th and Catron Boulevard.
Chairman,
Commissioner Adcock.
are we doing a motion on all 9 appeals, or are we just doing the tax ID 64155? Rod? Maybe you know.
My intent was to do a motion on all of them, since my recommendation is no change on all of them.
That'd be my motion.
Okay, I've got a motion to uphold the equalization recommendation and a second. Is there further discussion by the board? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pendleton.
Have a good day.
You guys ready? Hi, Brenna Williamson. I'm staff appraiser with Department of Equalization, Pennington County. I'm just here to discuss a property located at 14878 Jackie Lane, situated at the end of a residential cul-de-sac. It's about 9 miles east on 44, just south of Rapid City Regional Airport. Subject is a well-maintained, single-family resident of average quality and condition. It was built in 2002, comprised of 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and it's got a 2-car attached garage.
Rena, can I, hold up one second here.
That's fine. I'm getting kind
I haven't found that one yet.
Adams, right?
This is Daniel Adams, yep, and this is for, the property ID on this one is gonna be 54560.
The 10-10 time, guys. It's the next set.
Oh, I've got it here, but is there, I presume we have a,
Yeah.
Get a bunch of files for that first one, that last one we just got done.
I got rid of all those.
Did you need them?
So the name on it is
Daniel
Adams.
Adams.
Everybody else found it? I'm the only one that can't find it?
Mine was right on the top.
I do have a printout of the property here. It is just a recommendation because Mr. Adams is not here today. If you wanted that to just look at it, you can. If not, I can just kind of
Okay, go ahead.
give you the detail. Okay, so 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms on this one. 1,120 square feet above grade and 1,120 square foot of a fully finished basement on this. We do have that valued at $297,900, and then with that, the property also includes a detached garage that is valued at $31,600, sitting on just over an acre, 1.02. That land is at $34,300, and based on the comprehensive analysis I've done with the data on the home as well as comparable sales in the neighborhood and market area. My recommendation is just to uphold the full and true assessed value with no change at $363,800.
So moved.
163,900. So that's your motion, Commissioner Hadcock?
Yes, sir.
And did I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Laster. Any further discussion?
Thanks, Brianna.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'm just gonna put them the same one I just did.
Thank you.
All right,
Go ahead.
are we ready or do we need to wait for Commissioner Lassiter?
I think you can start.
Okay. Good morning, Scott Dressler, appraiser in the Equalization Office. Today we're here to look at the appeal for tax ID 62475. This is at 24294 Metz Road. Metz Road is about 2 miles east of Keystone on Highway 40, where South Rockerville Road meets Highway 40, and essentially where Playhouse Road also meets Highway 40. The subject property, just a second to get over to my notes. The subject property is a 2020 built home with a detached garage. We have the home as average minus in quality. It's just under 900 square feet, one bedroom, one bathroom, with a 1,200 square foot detached garage located on just a hair over 3 acres. This year is the first year of a full assessed value on the property. We had the home at 85% complete last year and no garage, so the garage was fully added this year. I do have a few notes to go over on sales, but first we'll get to the value. For 2022, the assessed value was $256,000. That's 58.2 on the land and 197.8 on the structures. My recommendation is no change to the assessment. Taking a look, we do have sales of some of these smaller square footage homes in this general region as well as just in some hills property. I'm going to make a few notes on some of the sales. Comparable number 2, it's up on Borglum Road. It's a 2004 build that's a little bit higher in quality. It's 1,044 square feet over an unfinished basement, so it does have that basement area. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom with a 1,080 square foot detached garage on just under 4 acres. This one sold for $370 in October of 2020. Comp number 3 is up on Pask Flower, another road that accesses off of Highway 40. It's a 1993 build of a lower quality, 768 square feet, also 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. This has a 1620 square foot shop building on just over 3 acres, sold in June of 21 for $295. Comp number 5, it's out on Old Hill City Road, so this one's closer to Hill City. It's on a smaller lot, however, property out there does tend to sell higher, so its land value is actually higher, even though it's on 1.29 acres. This is a much older home. It's a 1946 build that's had some updating. It's 820 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, small detached garage. This one sold pre-COVID market boom in 2019 for $261,000. And then I have a couple other notes on sales that are going to be the second page of what I gave you. The first sale, this occurred after the assessment date. So this is a sale that'll get looked at next year when setting values. It's on Twisted Oak Trail, which is also off of Highway 40 between Keystone and Hermosa. It just sold in January for $402,000. It's a 2017 build. It is higher in quality than the subject, but it's also 1,070 square feet, no basement, 1,000 square foot attached garage, also on 3.02 acres. And then the final one, this is off of Wolframite Road, which is between Keystone and Hill City. This isn't even a house. This can best be described as a seasonal use cabin. It's a train car that has utilities in the summer. It's on just under 6 acres, and it sold this year for $430,000. So it's much smaller in square footage. It's a seasonal utility cabin, and again, selling for well over what the assessment on this property is. I know that Leslie has some concerns with the value in relation to some of her surroundings, one of which being in the 100-year floodplain. We do look at sales every year to see if there's an influence on those floodplain problems. Generally speaking, there's not a drastic market difference in those. This year, looking a little closer to Hill City, and in the last couple of years, we do have homes that have sold completely within that 100-year floodplain, still selling for above assessment, but in large part because of what the market is. And then when taking a look at it, generally in the county, those creek-fronted properties do tend to sell for a greater amount, not a lesser amount, with having some creek there. And then one of our other concerns is one of the neighbors' properties has sheep, right?
About 100 animals.
Has, lots of animals, which, again, that property to the south there. But again, out in the county, that's one of the draws of the county is there's a little more flexibility with what you can do with your land. And we regularly have sales next to, we'll say, agricultural operations, not necessarily just, lots of animals on a lot. And we have to examine those for market influence and not a discernible market effect on those. So that's kind of my piece for right now.
Any questions of Scott before we go to Mr.
Mr.
Court?
Chair,
Commissioner Roskinek.
Scott, do you have to have any special insurance if you're in the flood plain? Or do you got to be in the floodway for that?
I think in the 100-year you have to carry it.
Correct.
But again, that's if the property is mortgaged. Eh, you don't necessarily have to carry it if it's not mortgaged. And like I said, we've had properties that have sold in the same level of flood influence that in hills settings that are selling at or above assessed. In large part because there's a lot of draw and desire to have hills property. So,
Any other questions? Go ahead.
So you said they're based on comparable sales, you don't see any difference?
based on how properties that have this same influence have been selling, especially in the hills, I'm not seeing a negative effect as compared to the ones that are sitting outside of that zone. Specifically looking, one of the areas I watch is, surrounding Hill City and Old Hill City Road. I know there's a sale just off of 16 as you're heading down towards Three Forks. The entirety of where the home sits and the buildable sections of its land sit in that 100-year. It was an average quality, older build of about 1,000 square feet on 12 acres, but it sold for $700,000 and above assessed value. And then there was another one back behind the sawmill that sold last year. Same instance, completely in that 100-year floodway and selling at or above what the assessments come in at. So
Those sales, they had improvements on them?
yes,
So we don't know,
this property also has improvements on it. So it's proven that it can be built on with that there. So that they are still
normally
selling.
do is I try to get bare land sales, but then you don't have that influence. You don't know how to treat the improvements on those particular parcels because the buyer and seller will never sit there and say, this is what I sold the land for, this is what I sold the building for, and this is the impact that I think that the floodplain had. So I just wondered if you had any comparable sales of land in the floodplain and land outside the floodplain.
Offhand, I do not.
Chairman,
Commissioner Adcock.
for me, it's the floodway that, for me would influence it more. In the 100-year floodplain, you can build an acre above or build it up a certain amount and get it so it is basically legal in the floodplain. So that makes it so you can build almost anything in a floodplain if it's above that elevation. So if it was floodway, it'd be more of an influence, but in Rapids or in Hill City, if you look, there's a lot of properties there in the floodway that have been built back in the days, and they're still selling for some good amounts. So in this case, the floodplain for me, unless it's right next to a floodway where it's going to be a huge influence on that floodplain, for me, the property stays about the same. Or, like I said, improves it depending, because they have to build it up to a certain elevation for it to be legal in the floodplain.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Roskinek.
I believe that's 1 foot above base
Yes,
flood
sir.
elevation.
Yes, sir.
I just wondered if you had to have insurance for mortgage financing if it was in the floodplain. That was my question.
I believe so with 100-year,
Okay, thank you.
which is what this falls in, not the 500-year, which is the other designation that
Yes,
can be out there.
Ms. McCordy,
Um,
microphone is yours.
Thank you. So I don't have 5 copies just because I don't have that kind of money, but I have copies of some information. First of all, there is a distinction between being in the floodplain and being in what's called the X zone and the A zone, according to FEMA. My property is 100% in the A zone. It is a 10 out of 10 extreme flood factor. It is the only property in my entire development that is that. And if you, at one point you saw an overview of my property, my neighbors, we were at 1.1 parcel, and we are only separated by the creek. My neighbors are a 9 out of 10 in an A zone, where I'm a 10 out of 10 in an X zone. So there is a difference in terms of zones, and if somebody were to pull that up on Zillow, just like I did, or Realtor.com, they're gonna see that. And I do think that that's gonna be a factor. If you talk to my neighbors, my property was completely flooded in 1972. So I took a risk, I get that, that's my risk. As far as the comparables that Mr. Dressler pointed out, I get the sales part, but what I don't understand is the assessed value. Pask Flower, the one that he referred to, is a perfect example of a comp. I went there on my own. It's about 2 miles from my house. It's completely not in a floodplain, and it sits on an open field. So it's just different topography in general. But as far as being tucked back from the road, it's very similar to my property. It's being assessed at $211,900, which is 40 some odd thousand less than mine. And I think it's a really good comparable. And to say that, well, mine's newer, okay, and I don't have pictures of the interior of that because they weren't available online, but I do have pictures of my interior, and you will see that there's nothing fancy about it. And I'm happy to.
You want to hand those out, you're
Yeah,
welcome to.
so I'm like, is this like court where I can't approach a bench or something?
Oh, no, thank you, ma'am.
And just as a note, this is a property that I have not inspected. So I have not seen what the interior of this home looks like. I happen to live out there, so I've driven past on Highway 40, but other than that, I have not been afforded an inspection of the property.
So Pask Flower does sit on almost the exact same acreage as mine, so I do think it's a good comp. And I'm not asking anything unreasonable. I was asking to be more in the 220, 230 range, because right now as it sits, my home is the most expensive in my neighborhood, and it's the smallest. So my neighbor, who you can see there, who lives right across the creek, has double a house size, the exact same lot as I do, and they're assessed less than I am. And according to Mr. Dressler, that's because their home was built in 1977 and it's in subpar condition. My argument is you can't kind of have it both ways. If it's in subpar condition, then it affects the value of my house. And if it's not, then why is the square footage so different? According to Mr. Dressler, and I have this in an email from him, my house is being assessed at $172 and some odd cents per square foot, whereas my neighbors are at $94 per square foot. That seems like not mass assessment to me. That seems kind of unreasonable. Yes, their house was built in 1977, but again, it's almost twice as big as mine. And it sits on the exact same lot. And again, as we went back and forth, I think that the idea that if their house is in shambles should affect my property value, and I shouldn't be, to me, my assessment being larger than theirs when theirs is twice as big as mine on the same lot size seems counterintuitive to what mass assessment is. And we went back and forth, and Mr. Dressler explained it to me, but at the same time, this is my moment, so I figured I'd come down and take my moment, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but if I'm right, I don't think I'm trying to be unreasonable. I'm just trying to get more in that 220, 230 range, which I think puts me more in line with my neighbors, because again, we are all the same neighborhood, and more in line with that Pask Flower. And then as far as the Old Hill City Road comp that he mentioned, there are interior pictures from Zillow, and you can see for yourself what that looks like on the inside.
Thank you.
So that's that Old Hill City comp that I was able to pull.
Deb, can we have the comparables up there on the board? Thank you.
So
So from the pictures, it appears that a portion of the home is not finished.
it was never meant to be finished. Basically, what happened was I had this much money to kind of put in, and I needed a shell and a roof over my head. That's as finished as it's going to get. I don't make that much money. So you can see I live in it, and it's livable to me, and that's all it's ever going to be.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Oskinen.
Leslie, how many square feet is the house?
896.
896?
Yes. And I know we're not 30 ones up here. I'm just trying to understand what mass assessment looks like in my own neighborhood, because it,
So to begin with, you purchased raw land, is that?
correct. I purchased raw land. Jerry and I worked at planning and zoning, worked extensively, because at the point that I purchased it, it was a planned unit development with 3 terrible trailers on it. And it was known to the area as a meth hangout, basically. I rezoned it. I came before you guys actually to rezone it. So I went through all those steps with the point of building something small for me to be my forever home. So I went through this, and then of course I needed a floodplain development permit, and you need that each and every time you build on it. And I do think those are factors that people consider when they look at a property. If they looked at my property versus the exact same property outside of a floodway and thought, oh, I need flood insurance, and then I need, every time I put something up, I need to get a survey and go to the county and so forth. I do think those are factors. Maybe they're not to an out-of-state buyer, but to most people, I think they are.
Do you have the numbers on those comps, Deb, please?
So Leslie, you're giving us a range in what you think the value should be. What do you think that value actually should be? What are you asking for?
I put down on that form somewhere between 220 and 240, because I just want to be in line with my neighbors and not the highest property at the smallest square foot. That seems counterintuitive, especially looking at the assessment. I think Pasque Flower is a great comp to me, and I understand my home is newer, so that's why I'm not saying 210 or 211.
Mr. Chair,
And Commissioner Ross, can I?
taking into consideration the issues with the floodplain, the neighboring sheep farm or whatever, there's some external obsolescence there. My recommendation would be to drop the 256,000 by 10%, which would be 230,400 or $257.14 a square foot.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Further discussion?
If I could.
Go ahead.
When looking at the comparable sales, we are significantly below what similar properties are already selling for. On the whole, we're 20% below the average of what similar properties do sell for. In regards to assessment compared to neighboring properties, we do have to look at age, quality, condition, all of those, size, all of those play into that price per square foot. And in that area, this is not the highest dollar per square foot home in its immediate area. There is one, the Spans property was one that was brought up. It's a newer home as well. It's about a 2017 build, slightly higher in quality and significantly larger, and that one is still coming in assessment-wise at a higher dollar per foot than the subject. But when you're looking at, that price per foot, we do have to consider the economy of scale. It does cost more per square foot on a smaller home than a larger home. Where this home is situated, it is the newest home, one of the smallest homes, and its quality ranges in line, kind of spanning between the low and the high for what's right in that zone.
So Leslie?
Yes.
When you bought the property, you said there was some items you had to remove from the property?
Correct.
So you had to clean the property up before you
Yes.
could even build on it?
Yep.
Did you have to put the septic in and so forth?
No, the septic was there. It was unknown condition, and thank God it was okay. And there was a well there of unknown condition that was also okay. But the cleanup, I mean, you can talk to planning and zoning. They were grateful to have it cleaned up, and it took, it was me. It was me in a dumpster and a wheelbarrow.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to, what was the exact number, Ron? 230?
$230,400.
Is there any further discussion on it?
Chairman,
Commissioner Adcock?
I understand some of your circumstances, ma'am. I don't think it should be as low as 230, maybe 240, 240 something. based on some of the floodplain. There's a lot of properties that even we've had to clean up for many issues, but they haven't dropped our assessment. We knew we were going to get those properties in those conditions at that time. And then once we fixed it up, of course, then they jacked up the price accordingly because it's fair market value. So the 230, I believe, is too low. I think it should be, I think the 256 is more than fair, but the 240, based on, I just think 230 is too low for the property. And the next year, you know, and you have to know this, they're probably gonna move it back up. And you'll be coming back every year because they're gonna put it in fair market value. So I can't agree, ma'am, with the 230. I think it should be a little bit higher than that, so.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Oskinek.
you know, that's kind of what I thought when I saw the pictures. That's the inside of that is minimal finish. I mean, I saw some OSB board,
Again,
and that's why I recommended a reduction of 10%, because you got the animal farm next door. That might not bother everybody, but it's gonna have an impact on some of the market participants looking for that type of property. And the floodplain, I know it's not all floodplains created equal. This one here seems to be a little more adverse than the surrounding neighbors, as pointed out by the exhibits that were presented to us. So that was my rationale for the reduction of 10%. And it seemed to fall in line with what Leslie was asking for. So that's my rationale there.
and just as a note, I've never been to this property, so I did not know what the inside of this home looked like. So that is new information from my side.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner.
I'll speak to the floodplain aspect of it only because I'm personally impacted by a floodplain. Originally, I was categorized as X, and then y'all remember FEMA came in and they changed everything. So when I was an X floodplain, I paid $465 a year. When they recategorized me to an A, I paid $3,700 a year. That A is a significant amount increase in there. So I don't know what you're paying on yours, but I know mine significantly increased once you go from an X to an A, and that was after FEMA did that. So I'm kind of in favor of that because I do realize you're probably paying more than that, seeing the inside of your home. It's not a complete finished home. You're living very minimally, so.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
4-1 approved.
Thank you.
thank you.
The next one is represented by a tax rep from out of state who's on Zoom.
Okay, and this is Daryl Smith on the phone, on Zoom.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll let Rod go ahead and make the presentation, and we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Good morning, board. Good morning, Daryl. I do have a
Morning.
handout to give to the board. So there's actually going to be two parcels. The first one that I'd like to talk about is Carriage Green, which is tax ID 48664. So I want to give the board a moment to make sure that they're looking at the right info. So just again, this is the Carriage Green apartment complex, tax ID 48664, located at 4205 Elm Avenue. If the board's ready, I'll start.
Took me a little while too. I was on unmute the second one. This is, hope I got that.
Go ahead, Rod.
Okay, so again, this is an apartment complex located at 4205 Elm, and it is a 96-unit apartment building. My recommendation is to uphold our current value, which is $7,932,300. And I'm just going to kind of go over the comments on the handout that I gave. Our year-over-year market growth for this property type is 13.39%. This property was appealed last year. The board, the county board upheld our value last year. The change year over year is 5.83%, so it's a little less than what we saw in the market. So real quickly, how we do all of our multi-residential properties, this is going to be fourplex or larger. There's about 365 of these that we've created an income model for. And so when we're looking at market value, what these would sell for, we're getting our data from an income model. The way that we created that is over the last couple of years, we've sent out surveys to all property owners that are part of this modeling, asking them to send us their income, their expenses, their current rental rates, just kind of a data check to make sure that all of our information is good. What we do is, so we've gathered all of these market rents, their vacancies, their expense ratios. We calibrate that, group that into similar groups so everybody is kind of in their similar bracket. Anywhere from the lowest end of our model is going to be converted motels that have that aren't that don't have utilities metered out for every unit. It's basically a motel that's been converted. That's the low end. And then on the high end, we have excellent apartments. So we've created these categories and made sure that when we're assessing these, we're comparing them to other comparable properties. The reason that we do that is we want to get a direct cap rate. So when we are looking at how these are going to value out, the cap rate that we're pulling is a result of all of these expenses. And we had about a 25% return of our survey, which is pretty good for trying to get this type of analytics. So the way that we derived our cap rate is we got all of the expenses, got those bracketed to similar properties, and then when they sell, we now have a sale value to compare to the expenses of that exact same property, and then we're going to pull a direct cap rate out of that. And so it's a much more accurate way to get our cap rate. What we see from a lot of the tax reps is they'll go to a source like realtyrates.com or something that's going to use a regional cap rate that can involve, cities like Denver and Minneapolis. Typically, Rapid City is going to get categorized into the Midwest, and so it's not as drilled down into our local market as what we were able to do through our survey analysis and building our own model. So the way that we drive our cap rate, I feel good about. I feel it reflects the market. So that's an important part because as we work through this property and the next one that we'll be looking at, some of the biggest differences are going to be the cap rate that I'm using versus what Mr. Smith is going to be using, and also the rents. So again, we're looking for market rents, not necessarily what that property is getting for rents for this year. In talking to many property owners, there's a handful of them that are going to be keeping their rents low, below market, because they don't want to have to deal with the turnover if they do raise the rents. We have to keep our analysis at market. What someone would, if there's a sale, what that new buyer thinks they can get for rent, that's the established market. So we do have properties where what they're getting for actual rents might be slightly less than what the market has proven is normal for that type of property. So those will be a couple of the things that we will likely be discussing is market rents versus what the property is actually getting, which in some cases is less than market, and where the cap rate comes from. So ours is derived directly, locally, and it's very in touch with what we're seeing in our market with growth. So this particular property, if you look at the second page on my handout, again, we're looking at the Carriage Green Estates. And on the very top there, what I'm using for their the vacancy rate is 4%. That's what we've derived from the market. I still think that's a little bit conservative. We have quite a few of them where their actual vacancy is 0 to 2%. So I'm using a 4% market vacancy. We derived that from our survey results. The expense ratio that I'm using is 43% for this type of property. The range that we saw when we modeled out at the high end was 60%, and that came from those motel converted units, which are a completely different quality than what the subjects are. And the lowest that we saw was 41%. So this one, with the expense ratio of 43%, that comes from our survey results as well. The cap rate that I'm using is 7.5%. Which resulted in a final market value of $7,932,300. When we look at that as a per unit value, again, this had 96 units, so that comes out to $82,628 per unit. And so that's a real quick on the income. If you flip the page and look at the sales, so I'm using the same 3 sales for the Carriage Green property that we're talking about now, and I'm going to be using the same 3 sales for the other property that we're going to be talking about, which is called Bridgewood, because they're both very similar properties, so it made sense to use the same sales analysis. So looking at the 3 that I have there, the very top left corner, that's my first sales comp. That's 1013 North La Crosse. If you're familiar with that, this is a lower quality complex than the subject. When we bracket our model, this comes in as a fair quality, whereas the subjects are both average. So when we do our sales analysis, we're going to adjust the sale up to try to make it more similar to the subject property. And if you look over at the sale per square foot, now this is after adjustments. We're adjusting for time because this particular sale happened, well, it doesn't have much of an adjustment. It happened in September of 2021, so I'm only adjusting from September to November, so a very small time adjustment. And then I have to do an adjustment for quality since this comp is a lower quality than the subject. My adjustment there is 18%. So the final adjusted per unit value for that is $82,245. And again, just without any adjustments, this one sold for $68,000, almost $69,000 per unit without any adjustments, and it's considerably less quality. The second comp, which is just to the right of that in the handout, 701 Dakota. This one is more similar to both subjects, so it required less adjustments. This one sold in 2020 for $78,750 per unit. With the adjustment of time, the final adjusted value is $85,200 per unit. And then the same for the very last comp, which is La Crosse Estates. This is a larger complex. This one has 265 units. Generally, the economy of scale is going to say that this should sell for a little bit less because of the large amount of units of a comparable property. The only adjustment, so I have a time adjustment there. The final adjusted per unit sale for this is $87,000 per unit. So all three of those sales, when you look at them and come up with an average, $84,800 per unit is what these comps are coming out at. And again, the subject for Carriage Green, our assessed value is $82,600 per unit. So we're actually less than what the sales are indicating. But I feel we're right on as far as what the market income analysis would support. So that's what I have on Carriage Green, and we'll be looking at, again, the same comps and the same analysis when we look at Bridgewood later, but that's my opinion on Carriage Green.
Okay, Mr. Smith, would you like to address Carriage Green?
Yes, sir. On Carriage Green, I had, again, what Rod said earlier, we're having pretty much a bigger disagreement about a cap rate. He's at 8.3. I'm at 8.3. He's at 7.5. I would argue that last year the value per unit on a subject property was 74,145 per unit, and this year we bumped up to 82,688, which is way higher than I would recommend. I would recommend somewhere closer to around $75,000 per unit, which would make it in line with everyone else, including your sales, which unadjusted would be somewhere around $78,000 per unit. I did mail off my income analysis to the county for this hearing. I don't know where it is on the screen, but I did submit everything over to the county for review.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Roskinek.
Rod, this is an excellent presentation. I agree. Realty rates, it's a subscription. I subscribe to it myself. Do I use it? No. The only time I'd use realty rates is if I got into a property like a mortuary, where it's a special use property, then you just don't have that market data out there. But when you get properties like this, there's tons of good data, and that's what you're using. So you're using a market extracted cap rate. Remember earlier in this meeting, I mentioned 7.5% for Stone Ridge. Well, that's exactly what you're using here. That is what the market is bearing right now in Rapid City relative to these type of properties. These type of properties aren't bought what units are selling for per unit. They're bought based on income. And your variables there is your net operating income after it's been adjusted and your cap rate. And if you take the two, the number's what it is. That's how investors buy these properties. And so I think you're right on. Side note.
Go ahead.
New construction, $150,000 a unit.
Yeah.
So, Rod, do you want to, are we going to hear both of them first, or do you want to take them one by one?
I'd say let's just vote on this one maybe, and then we can talk about the next one.
Okay. I don't have a motion on the table.
Move to recommend staff's findings.
Got a motion by Roskinek to uphold staff findings. Is there a second? I'll second. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And I do have another handout for the Bridgewood. It's really just a one-pager since we'll be using the same income and comparables as the last.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So not a whole lot different than this, but I did, on this one, but I do want to point out that the change that we made year over year, this previously was two separate tax IDs. And I didn't feel like we were quite catching the value correctly because it needed to be combined into one tax ID. So last year, some of the shared amenities between what was two properties last year had like the pool on one property, and then the other one was just the buildings. And really, when you look at how this type of property would value on an income, the rents are covering all amenities. So it made more sense to combine this into one, even though it did previously have two different tax IDs. So tax ID 71444 is the combined property. Now, in doing that, I do have a recommended change. I did review some of the data that we had in our model. I did make an adjustment to our expense ratio because I wanted to make it just like the carriage green that we had. So if you were looking at the second page where the income approach is, because these are very similar, they are right next to each other. They're going to have the same market vacancy, the same expense ratio, the same cap rate. So in doing that, it did create a new value than our original assessment. So my recommendation is to change the value from the 10,927,800 to a new stipulated value of 10,801,800. And so that breaks down into the land at 1,196,800 and the improvements at 9,605,000. So again, it's really kind of the same thing. One thing I did want to point out on this one, as I looked at Mr. Smith's analysis, is one of the reasons that they are coming up with a different value is when I look at their expense ratio, it was at 57%, which I'm not finding common in the data set that I have. Like I said, there are some properties that are in the high 50s to 60s, but that's a different type of property. That's really, I could only find that on properties that were converted motels into apartments. They have a higher expense ratio, and typically your lower quality apartment buildings are going to have a little higher expense ratio.
Rod, can I ask you a question? Did you take in consideration of inflation, basically utilities and things like that, that have went up, probably doubled? I know ours have at our motels,
As far as the expense ratio,
yes.
well, I'm getting it from what's provided to me
Okay,
by the owners. So I would assume that
they included
they're
that this year.
including, I mean, any change year over year is reflected in the data they're giving me.
This is the first year that mine have doubled, like the electricity went from 2,500 to 5,000. I mean, the costs have doubled for a lot of these properties, and these are pretty big properties, so.
Just keep in mind, we're still dealing with November 1,
Mr. Chair,
so
But it's still.
Commissioner Roskinek.
inflation.
so that 57%, that could include what they consider capital expenses, which is not a typical expense. So that's just one reason that could be a little inflated. And normally that 43%, that's always going to stay the same because when expenses go up, rents go up. The expense ratio typically will not change. It's always going to be 40% for the most part.
And this property was appealed last year. Their expense ratio is very similar to what it was last year. Another indication when I see a high expense ratio is I want to see, well, are they getting market rents? Because it's a ratio. So if their rents are low and their expenses are fairly static, or, the ratio of the expenses to the income can be high if your income isn't at market. And that's what I believe is happening
Why
on this.
we talked about potential rent, not actual rent.
Exactly.
What is the potential
Yeah,
rent?
and so I believe the rents on this property are lower than what my model is indicating. I believe a potential buyer would look at this and say, I'm going to increase these rents. That's my opinion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner LaCroy.
I'd make the motion to go with Rod's recommendation of 1,196,800 for the land and 9,650,000 for the improvements.
605,000.
Yeah, 605,000.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second for the discussion. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Ryan Kelly, and he's here.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Kelly.
You guys have the little map that I sent you by email by chance? If not, I can give you one more. Thank you.
This map, Ryan?
This isn't money. Why are you clicking money?
Oh.
Let's see that again, Deb, sorry.
Is that
This
it,
is
Ryan?
my map.
That's the same one you have, Ryan?
Kind of, sort of. It's similar to mine. I'm just telling you about usable.
Thank you.
It'd be pretty easy after that last one. Small fry kind of guy after that.
Hello again. Shannon Champion, Miss Shannon, Director of Equalization. We're going to be discussing tax ID 50345, owned by Ryan and Rhonda Kelly. Mr. Kelly owns a 20-acre piece of property at 23340 First Thunder Road, which is off of Victoria Lake Road, out Sheridan Lake Road. The appeal today is for ag status on the land. In our codified law 10-6-112, two of the three criteria must be met. First is mandatory, which is our primary use, which is devoted to the land, opposed to a mere secondary or incidental use. Second would become acreage, minimum of 20 or 40 acres in our county. Income, minimum of $2,500, 3 of the past 5 years. I did visit the property and met with Mrs. Kelly to confirm the information of use and some of the buildings. While on the property, there were the presence of 2 cows, a mini donkey, a miniature horse, some goats, and some chickens. When visiting with Mrs. Kelly, she stated that the goats are pets, so they are not sold, and the egg production is mostly for personal use. Back at the office, I came back and I measured out the area that is being used for grazing. And if you look at that aerial map I provided, it is measured out by the actual use of the property. The 14.04 acres is either in residential use for the home or for commercial use or not being used at all. 0.16 acre is where the goats and the chickens are fenced in. 4.69 acres is the fenced in area where the cattle and the equine are located. And 1.1 acre is an area that looks to be like a dirt bike track. So there is, though it is not fenced off, segregated from the pasture with the cows, there's no grass, so there's no grazing available in that area. After the limited on-site inspection of the property and the aerial calculations of use of the property, I recommend no change in classification due to not meeting the primary use of the property, which is the mandatory criteria of the law for agricultural classification.
Oh, come on, Shannon. I thought we were going to be on the same side.
Looks like she got it down pat for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. We're side by side. I thought we were on the same team. Good?
So,
Yeah.
Shannon, a question for you.
Yes, sir.
One of the comments you made is that some of the land was not being used at all. So is that because of terrain reasons, or is there other reasons why it's not being used, in your opinion?
In my opinion, no. I think it is perfectly usable to allow the cows to graze on that area.
Okay. Ryan?
completely disagree. Everything to the right of my barn, to the east of my barn, I sent you a little map there too. I did pick out a little area down there that could be fenced and it could be grazed. And I'm coming up with different numbers, of course. Um, I'm coming up with about 1.9 acres that I could use that I'm not using. So that land to the east of my barn is, the majority of it's entirely too steep, nearly cliff type land. So no, it's not usable in any way. Some of it you can't walk down or up. So there's no way you could graze that. I think my numbers are a little more accurate. Clearly, I guess I'm on my side. So, so I feel like I'm using the vast majority. I'm calculating 77% of the usable grazable land for pasture land currently. So I do not have the 40 acres. That's pretty clear here. But I do make the 2,500 per year. That is one of the requirements. So I guess that's my argument.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Roskinek.
that's the problem with looking at paper. Paper's flat.
Yep.
If they had a topography overlay on this, you would clearly see, or it would make it much easier for us to see why this property to the right of the barn is probably not being used for grazing because we're raising cattle and not mountain goats.
While I was on the property, I did get out and walk up into the area, and there's also range cows on the lease around surrounding his property, and you can clearly see the trails that are left by the cows in the game. And I was easily hiked it myself.
Do we get any photos?
Do I have any photos? I not here.
In Rapid Map, you can lay contours on that. That would be nice.
Chairman,
Commissioner Hancock.
so you have 14 point, what as ag? How much do you have as ag, Ms. Shannon?
I only have, it's like
0.69.
4.69 acres
The rest is a dirt bike, pet area,
or residential.
and are they great, you said they're grazing to the east of it, Shannon?
There, so it, there's a hill just behind the barn there,
Yes, ma'am.
or the shed, and it kind of slopes down, and then there's a flatter space closer to the line to the right.
So that doesn't get it, be included in on ag?
If it was being used.
I thought you said you saw some cows when you were up there in
No, I didn't
trail.
see cows. Mrs. Kelly had stated that they have problems with the range cows that get in to their property. And so the range cows do have access to that. So
So they're not grazing on it or anything?
his cows are not. The range cows may at times.
Okay, so the only thing that's being used is the, and how about the barn and everything else that's over on the road that's on there? Is that included? Does he get like a $10,000?
So that shed that's there, that is just above the pet area.
Right,
It's kind of a mixed use building. On inspection, just shy of half of it is more of a living space.
okay.
And then the other half is a shop, which is kind of mixed use with the agricultural stuff and his commercial business.
So if it's mixed use, it cannot be used as, or classified as ag or partial ag? No,
I would not, no,
there's nothing like that.
no. It either it is or it isn't.
Okay.
Which sucks.
So basically, Ryan, you're using for ag 4.69
Well, it's more,
acres. Tell me, because that's bare land, doesn't mean that you can use it and say it's ag. It has to be used actually for ag.
nah, I
right, Ryan?
gotcha. And what I'm saying is the usable land, I'm using nearly 80% of the usable land. The dirt bike track is there, but they graze the entire thing. I mean, however, Shannon has that as a small acreage there. That's not correct. They graze that entire thing. So it's not separately fenced. Also understand that Victoria Creek cuts that property. So that is literally a sheer cliff on the northeast corner of my property. It's You can't walk up it or down it, and cows don't walk up it or down it. My entire property is fenced. Range cattle will come, but they wouldn't even think of hitting those areas.
So Ryan,
In fact, these areas are so steep to the south of my property that the Forest Service didn't log it. They logged everything. You can see where they logged, kind of down First Thunder Road. Those areas are so steep they won't log them. That's kind of why that property is not used like that.
so Shannon, Ryan, how much do you think your house and your shop is worth?
Currently,
Yes.
I don't know. It's not for sale. I don't know. It's not for sale.
Bedrooms and how big is your house?
I wouldn't argue the value. I'm not here to argue the value. I'm here to argue the ag status of my land
Okay.
because I've kind of worked my butt off on this deal, raising these stupid cows and selling them, processing them. I mean, so it's. I think I use my land more as ag than a lot of people with 40 acres.
Hey,
But that's a whole nother can of
how
worms
many
that we're not
cows
going
do
to
you
fix
have?
here. Two at a time. Two at a time. Yeah.
I think she's pretty generous at 4.69 with two cows.
Oh, so
I'm just saying,
So,
Ryan, that's
but I'm not gonna get any ag value out of that.
right
No, 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 it's all gonna stay residential. So to me, that's kind of the
because it's two
beef.
cows plus you have a huge house, a barn.
Well, I have a
I
lot of
think she did.
kids.
I think she did pretty nice at 1.1735.
I'm with you all day on that. I'm not arguing that point. But the ag value, if I hadn't been working at it since 2016, I wouldn't be here.
But
You
working
know,
it is like a rancher or a farmer that's working
sure,
it, kind of.
sure.
I mean, that's basically your land around your house, your barn, and you made it's a recreation area a little bit, Ryan.
Oh, I disagree, Deb.
Okay.
I don't recreate on that land.
I
No, that's the cows area.
maybe not the egg where the 4.69 is,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
And I don't recreate on that other half because you can't recreate on it. I mean, it's impossible.
But your value of your house, I think and the barn and the buildings you
I,
have, I think she did pretty good
oh,
on
and I
that.
think that should be lower too.
I know,
I
Ryan.
suspect this isn't a lot different than many other small little farm operations where they're putting some teaching responsibility to children and so forth of taking care of
Yep.
livestock as they're growing up and so forth. So I have a little bit different opinion on how this should be done also. And I don't think we should penalize somebody for property that literally can't be utilized for primary purposes that it's,
You can build on it, Gary.
so.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Roskinek.
this would be pretty similar to the three parcels that we worked on earlier today relative to they met the $2,500 and definitely you can see that this is dedicated to, even though it's only two cattle, it's clearly I see production of cattle. Whether it's 100 cattle or two, it's still dedicated to that particular use. So,
Chairman,
Commissioner Adcock.
if you look at it, you can build on most land, so he has buildable land all here. It can be a little bit steep, Ryan, and you build houses, so I've seen you build them on that kind of land before, Ryan. And you do some amazing work, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
I've seen your
Yeah.
work. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of people with two cows or two goats or two something, and we've never dropped it and made it ag since I've been here, Ryan, without being rude. Different opinion of our couple of our commissioners, but I just think, again, you have some buildable land on the right-hand side. You have a huge barn, you have a huge house, and you have two cows. If you were running cows, I know it's not easy to have cows, goats, or whatever, but that's not an ag business. And that's kind of what unless there's soils or something else that make it so we should drop that price. But again,
Buildable
if,
land to the right, Deb?
right, where the road, so
No.
Ryan, if you had, let's ask Shannon. Shannon, if you had to value the house and the barn, how big is that house?
Let's see. I have just over 2,500 square feet.
Okay, how many bedrooms, how many baths?
I have 6 bedrooms, 6 baths.
Okay, and then how about the barn?
The barn is just about 2,000 square feet.
Okay, and there's livable space in it.
There is just under half.
Half is a living space.
Yes.
Okay. So if you had to value a house, usually at 6 bedrooms, 6 baths, with 2,500 square feet, how much is usually? I'm just gonna say that most houses, Ryan, that I know are over $1 million just on the house with the 6 bedroom, if not more, 6 bath. Then you have half of a 2,000 square foot. I think she's being real generous here, is what I'm saying, with
Yeah,
half living
yeah.
space. So how much more does that add to the value? So she's actually, with that, I think she's including some of the space that she doesn't think you can build on and some of the other stuff based on, Shannon, that barn and that
Definitely not.
house and some other stuff.
Yeah, definitely not here to argue the value of the house. No, I think it's fine.
Well, just,
Yeah,
not that you don't have ag, but I think
yeah.
she's considered some of your land unusable and some of that stuff with the barn, with the house, and then valued it based on that because you do have a 6 bedroom, 6 bath, and you have a 2,000 square barn. You also have some outlining buildings, and you have it on 20 acres.
Sure.
So we've had
Sure.
people on 30 acres and 6 acres at 700 and something with smaller houses and, yeah. So I think,
But
I'm
the
just
house
saying, I
shouldn't
think
have
she,
any bearing on the use of the land. I'm using the
no,
land.
yes, but you have 2 cows,
There,
Ryan,
well,
and,
yeah, I'm telling you though, it takes it to get them. You know.
yes, but my friends have like 2 goats on an acre or 2 acres
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah,
like you have.
yeah.
And,
No, I got goats.
yeah,
They're a different
they don't
deal.
get egg.
Yeah, no, no, and you
Okay,
shouldn't with goats unless you're really using them as ag. Those cows are ag, the 100% ag. So the right half of that property, unusable to the south, floodplain through the middle, and unusable to the north. So I mean, to me, to sort of think of it as development land, you're not going to develop it because number one, the neighbors won't let you split anything out there. It's real tight, and even if you could, you can't build on the right half of that land. You couldn't build one house over there.
so
I'm
Ryan,
not kidding.
if I came in, you would sell me 20 acres for 1,173,500.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But that's not why I'm here.
But that's why I'm
That's
saying,
yeah.
she's doing fair market value. If I bought 20 acres for one, with that house, that barn for 1,173,500, I'd be in heaven. I'm just saying, Ryan. I'm just
Possibly.
saying,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, Ryan, with
Possibly.
no ag status. So I'll be
Yeah.
up straight with you,
Yeah.
sir.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Roskinek.
Ryan, could you explain the process, how you generate the $2,500? So you put the cattle on there, you feed them, you water them,
Yeah.
and then evidently they get to a stage where they got to go somewhere, they get processed, and then when you so when you generate the 2,500, is it processed meat that you're generating it from, or is it just a
Correct.
cattle on the hoof?
Correct. No, no, no. It's processed. I go to Western Meats and they process them, and then I sell quarters or halves or whatever it takes to get to the 2,500.
Okay.
I don't sell past that.
Sounds like
That's
personal use,
the
true.
number. But oh, I don't know. It's kind of a bigger pain in the ass than personal use. But
Ryan,
And in conversation with both Mr. and Mrs. Kelly, they both stated that the cattle are processed for essentially family members
yep.
to have beef. And so every person that has bought from them that I have receipts for or bills of sale for are of someone of the same last name.
minus
And
one.
Minus one.
how many children do you have?
11. Yeah, 11. So.
And you're not raising those cows for yourself?
Well, no, I do
Those
keep
cows?
some. I do keep some. Absolutely. I sell up to the 2,500 and I keep the rest. Absolutely.
Family
Yeah.
members.
Because I need it.
So who's the market for your product?
My children mostly, but then some of my previous customers actually, I sell to those guys too. House customers. So, yeah.
His family, he said.
Yeah.
So then after you take the two cattle to the Western Meats, get them processed, and how do you replace them and put another two on there?
Buy more.
And
Buy more.
where's that come from?
Well, they've come from different places, I guess, Northwest South Dakota and a couple out of Nebraska. So,
Okay.
yeah, and I go get them and haul them up and, yeah.
Commissioner
But
LaCroy?
I was just gonna ask what your ask is, because Ms. Shannon's got down here 4.69 acres is what she considers ag, and yours is 6.3, so we're talking a little under 2.3 acre difference in classification, am I correct?
But I'm talking more about the usable land. Shannon's talking about total land. She's talking the 4 point out of 20, and I'm talking 6.3 out of 8.9,
Yeah,
which is usable.
and I tend to agree with hers when you got a racetrack on there.
They graze it
And
though.
I watched my neighbors across the street build one, it's, yeah,
Yeah.
or use one, so.
They're just keeping the grass down for you whenever they graze your racetrack.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Don't want weeds in there.
I'm gonna make the motion, 1,173,500 stay.
That's
That'd be my
the,
motion.
that's the actual amount that's recommended by the staff.
Yes.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second one.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay,
Aye.
no. Motion died 3-2. Do I have a new motion?
I'm trying to figure out what that,
I think what you do is do it on the acreage rather than on,
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a statement? Ryan, I like what you're doing for kids and stuff in that nature. But, but as a small rancher myself, I understand how this works for getting the ag exemption. And I've never said I want to get to 2,500 and stop. That to me seems like you're doing it to meet an ag exemption. That's why I'm a no on this, mainly because, you know, Shannon's got and Joe's got, they've seen my records. Sometimes I get good years, I sell few. And sometimes I get bad years and I barely make it or I'm underneath it, but that's why they have that 5 years, so you can see if I've grossed it. But you just admitted to me that you sell it just to hit your 2,500 mark and that's it. That concerns me and it's great that we're raising it, but if you would have said, look, I'm trying to grow a business, I'm trying to add more cattle, but when you self-stated that it was just for that purpose, that gives me pause. I'm just saying that as someone who has small acreage and is raising and growing and doing pigs and cows and chickens, ducks, turkeys, and actually was looking at your numbers there, and I'm not trying to fault you this because it does say gross because I was looking through there, but I do gross based on whatever I make out of it, not the part that I'm charging them from the butcher. Like my customers pay the butcher fee to the butcher and they only pay me for a portion of it. So you're actually making almost twice as much per cow as I am. So I was thinking, how is he doing that? And then I read through it and listened to you and so you're actually, I've got to process roughly 4.5 to 5 cows to meet mine if I just did cattle. So I look at it a little bit differently. So that's why I was a no. And I'm just letting you know straight up from one who does ranching
Yeah.
as a business.
The sad thing is the money you put into those, you don't even get that back.
Right. I'm trying to help these guys understand that because when we start talking about cattle ranch land, it's going to be a big problem there too.
Well, Chairman, if we're gonna start doing ag with 2 cows and we're gonna start reclassifying how we do ag and how we do land, I'm good with that. But let's be fair to everybody that comes up here, not just certain people. So, no offense to you, Ryan, but I've never seen this 2 cow thing in my entire life, Ryan, and you're selling it to your family. So
You know, the
you look
sad,
like, without being mean, Ryan, you look like you're playing the game of ag so you can get some ag status.
yeah,
So
yeah.
he just proves some of that.
Mhm.
And then now we're going to drop a value of something because of ag and because of this. And I just, that's, this is, this is not right.
Mr. Chair.
So
Commissioner
you can
Roskinek.
say whatever you want, but you're playing a game with 2 cows. Well, guys, you're agging
But
people
Deb,
that it
it's
shouldn't
your
be egged.
game. It's all on your form. I didn't make these
Yes,
rules. I'm just playing the game.
we're telling these guys that
Yeah,
2 cows.
I didn't make the rules though. You made the rules.
Commissioner Roskinek has the floor.
So
Yeah.
Ryan made a good point that there's folks out there with 40 acres and they got ag, and I don't know that there's any proof that they qualify for the 2,500. So I guess it's just being fair.
No,
Yeah.
that's not true.
Mr. Chair, may I add something?
Sure.
That leads to Commissioner LaCroix's comment. The argument here, excuse me, is whether the principal use of the entire property is ag production. There is no such thing as a percentage ag of the property.
Right.
It's either all ag or not. So if you're looking at so many acres, we can't do a percentage. The argument is the principal use of the entire property is ag, then it's classed as ag. If not, it's non-ag.
I said.
And Mr. Ross Connect, I want to just address your 40 acres. You have to meet two of the three criteria. One is the principal use, which they have to prove an intent of profit, which is leasing cows, raising cows, and selling them hay, whatever it is. And the other would be the acreage. So they don't have to meet an income.
Right.
They meet the acreage
They don't have
and
either.
the intent of profit, which is primary use of their property.
I can just tell you, living in the hills, I don't want to start mentioning names, but it's being very misused, very, very misused.
Bring it in.
40 acres and not being used for egg.
So Chairman, she just said you had to meet two, and either had to be ag or not. So, we use it by principle. We follow policy and procedure. And that's the policy, right?
Is there another motion?
Can you make the same motion again?
Again?
You can't make the same motion.
Failed.
It failed, so you have to make another one.
You can bring it back for, somebody can bring it back for reconsideration. Voted
On the
that.
opposing side.
Yeah.
On the opposing side.
So it'd have to be.
It'd have to be one of you three that would bring
one
it
of the
back
three.
as a.
Yeah, bring it back.
I'd move that we move the 2022 assessed value to $1,173,000.
So you're
Second.
dropping it at $500.
Yes, sir.
I've got a motion. Is there a second?
Deb just seconded it.
Yes.
Deb did.
Pardon?
Deb seconded
You
it.
second?
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey.
4-1, approved.
Okay, so which one of you, I didn't hear all the votes, which one of you voted?
Commissioner Ross Connect.
Ross
Okay, so
Connect
4
was
to
a
1.
no.
That was supposed to be the easy one. What happened? Okay, thanks, Shannon. Okay.
Thank you, Ryan.
The next property is Weber, but Weber is not here and Chelsea has a recommendation.
Good morning again. Tax ID number is 19137. Current recommendation is 442,000 with land value at 70,500 and a structure value of $371,500.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Call the roll, or, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Chelsea.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. Just, I noticed it's at 11:10. Did we hear that they were not going to be here just because we're 2 minutes from 11:10, or I just want to make sure we're,
Didn't expect them to come.
okay, sorry.
442.
I just have to look at the time and I will, wait a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Derek Dalen. I'm an appraiser with Pennington County Equalization. And the property we are talking about has a tax ID of 47396. And it is located at 3926 Forest Park Circle. and it is owned by Pat and Karen Vidal. It is located in southwest Rapid City in the Carriage Hills neighborhood. And it is 4 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms. It is 1,992 square feet above ground. And has a 1,420 square foot finished basement. And there is a 640 square foot attached garage. And it was built in 2000. And it is on a 0.75 acre lot. Comparable sales for the subject property, they range from year built 1979 to 2004. And above ground square footage ranges from 1,738 to 2,736. And basement square footage ranges from 968 to 2,343. And basement finish ranges from 430,000 to 1,849, excuse me. And garage square footage ranges from 572 to 1,489. And the comparable sales range from 456,000 to 800,000. And with the subject property, I got a little bit ahead of myself here. I am recommending that the assessed value be 587,600. And this is the initial assessed value that was sent out to the property owner. That was appealed to the local board of equalization, where the local board changed the value to 579,100. And what the local board changed was the land value. They went from 85,400, where it was initially assessed, to 76,900. And again, going back a step, comparable sales range from 456,000 to 800,000. And quality of construction for the comparable sales ranges from good through very good minus. And with the comparable sales, I tried to focus on above ground square footage, just reviewing sales. Typically houses in the very good minus quality range, like the subject, tended to have larger square footage. So that would explain why some of the comps are more in the good through very good minus range. As far as some of the most comparable sales, comp number 4, if you're reviewing the handout I provided, is 250 square feet smaller and does not have a half bath like the subject. The comp does have approximately 220 more square feet of basement finish, and it also has a 2-car garage like the subject property. Also, the comp is on a smaller lot, and it is of good quality construction versus very good minus like the subject. And one thing I wanted to touch on is price per square foot. Residential properties are not valued on a price per square foot basis. And what I mean by that is our office does not look at a neighborhood and say, houses in this neighborhood are valued at amount price per square foot. And the reason for that is there's different qualities of construction, different ages, different condition that make that difficult to do so. So when we talk about our values, we're going to look at quality, size, condition, age, and other factors when we look at making our adjustments. And again, with that, and just reviewing the comparable sales in the subject property, I am recommending that the Board of Equalization uphold the initial assessed value of the subject property, and that is $587,600 and $502,000. That's attributed to the building, with a land value of 85,400.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Huskiner.
Yeah, I don't know how you do residential, but I'll tell you how I do commercial. I do use price per square foot because you can dial it in. You can look at two places and say, this one's worth more, but you gotta have some type of a unit of value so that you can actually see discrepancies. So what I look at is you've got 5 comparable sales. One, the low would be 197 per square foot, just,
Sale price, correct?
and the high would be 341. When we do the bracketing process, we try to bracket that. So like, I want to find something inferior to the subject, so that'd be the 197.28. But what I'm looking for here is something superior to the subject, which is being assessed at right now, $413.80 per square foot. That is a little hard for me to swallow as an appraiser. So I'm just saying that's the way I would apply the bracket. So you got something out there that would be higher than 413 per square foot?
Are you using the sale price?
I'm using the unit price per square foot. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the total square foot of the building above grade,
Yeah.
dividing it into the sale price.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right, yeah. Because I'm looking at, sale prices of the 5 comps, the 197.28 through the 341.59, and the subject property using its assessed value, obviously, since it did not sell, would be a 290.71. And so are you just talking like the building value when you're looking at your per square foot, or you're looking at the sale price, just so I'm understanding correctly?
I'm just looking at if you're saying the proposed assessment is 587,600.
Yeah.
And I'd say, well, how much is that per square foot?
Yeah.
So then if I take the 1,420 square feet above grade, is that the correct number?
1,992 square feet above grade, the subject property.
Okay. And what are you coming in at with that?
There's 294.98. That's the assessed value divided by above ground square footage for the subject property.
So, Derek,
Yes.
how come you don't use appraisal value? I mean, if Ron's he's figuring these things out by appraisal, what's the difference between figuring it out by appraisal? How come you guys don't, if that's how we're gonna figure, and how come we don't figure it that way? I guess what I'm saying is, he's figuring per square footage and doing some other stuff. He's an appraiser.
Right, yeah.
He's not an equalization guy.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between an equalization value and appraiser value? Why do you do those comparables like that? Do you use appraisal values? I'm not trying to be mean about how Ron's doing it, but
No.
I'm not getting how you can figure out per square footage, but you guys don't do it by per square footage, but you're doing it by market value and some other things. I can respect what Ron's doing,
Yeah.
but I also am in an equalization hearing, not an appraisal hearing.
Right,
So,
yeah.
and that's how he figures it, and I appreciate that. But, per square footage, how come we don't use those? How come we don't use the same things as some of the things that appraisers use?
Sure.
He put the square footage in his paperwork.
Yeah,
The other
I'm-
ones we've had
yeah.
haven't had that.
Well, I'm just asking him why we're not using those comparables, or there's difference, they'd have a different in price, wouldn't they?
We're right, yeah. And when
Okay.
I say, and what I mean by when we don't value per square foot, I'm talking about there's other adjustments for residential properties, because you're correct and Ron's absolutely correct, price per square foot.
Right.
I mean, that's what you go by for commercial real estate. And for residential properties, there's other adjustments that need to be taken into account as far as quality of construction, age, condition, and that side of things. And so the big point I wanted to get across is that when we look at a neighborhood like Carriage Hills, for example, we're not going to say every property in the Carriage Hills neighborhood has an above ground value of $294 per square foot. And that we're going to look at other adjustments for condition, quality of construction, I mean, size, land values, all those little things that go into our model when we determine our comparable sales values that we consider besides price per square foot.
And these are assessments, right?
Right, yes,
These
these
aren't
are,
appraisals of the exact amount of the house. It's actually an assessment. Usually, when you appraise since I've been around, it's always been higher, meaning people have always got more for their house than what they've assessed it since I've been around. So,
where?
usually the assessments like we're doing are lower than the per square footage and some of the stuff that we're talking about. That's why I'm trying to say, how are you doing comparables through an appraisal, some of it, unless you're doing what they're doing, meaning what equalization does.
Right.
So I'm listening to some of this, and some of it's kind of confusing me a bit because of how you're doing it and how we're appraising it. But then I started thinking, like I said, there's an assessment value and an appraisal value. So you're saying fair market value is the total appraised amount, then the assessment should be lower, right? Since I've been around. So
Where?
I guess I'm not getting how we're doing comparables that way by square footage and some of the stuff that is confusing me a bit of how we're figuring these things. Okay.
Right, yeah, and our assessed values, I mean, our goal is to be at market value. So our assessed values, it's our office's opinion of market value, and our current housing market being what it is,
Right.
there's gonna be sale prices that are above market value. The very first appeal you heard is a good example of that. So with our values, I mean, we want them to be in line with market value, and we're going to review sales and make sure that they're open market and that they meet the criteria to be a good sale. And we're going to make our adjustments based off of those sales and take into account quality, age, size, condition, all those things that I've mentioned to help determine our assessed
Bottom line.
values.
So, Mr.
There you
Chair,
go. So I appreciate that because I'm hearing per square footage and then doing comparables, and then I know Ron adds some more factors, but I don't know his factors. So I'm trying to figure out how you're getting a number and that it's through equalization. It's not a compromise. It's not whatever. It's the assessed value based on the factors that equalization bases their numbers on, condition, different stuff like that. So it's not always just some of the appraisal value, because like I said, I think the appraisal value is usually higher since I've been around instead of assessed value. So it's kind of confusing me with the two mixing in, so I appreciate
I
it.
understand, I kind of turned things on their head
Commissioner
by that
Ruskinet.
statement.
so this 587.6, now, were you on some kind of a spreadsheet? And you're making some assumptions, I'm assuming, condition, this is what I feel, quality, this is my opinion. So these are not factual. It's just it's a lot of assumptions, and so that's why we have the appeal process, so that the property owner can come in and say, look, I disagree with your quality. I don't know, the lot, does the lot have the view that the other comparable, they don't mention this in here, but a lot with a view, I can tell you as an appraiser, is worth a lot more than a lot without a view. And these are the factors that normally the property owner can identify. So everything's on a spreadsheet, and a lot of assumptions are made, and that's why we have these appeals. And I
We're
hope to hear
right,
from the property owner.
we're right, yes, I mean, you're correct, and I will mention that Mr. Vidal, I looked at his property March of last year, and I asked him, I mean, were there any changes, was there anything he wanted me to take a look at this year, and we agreed that, or he said that nothing changed, so there's no sense in me coming back to see things that I saw a year ago, and you're correct. Our assessed values, it's our office's opinion of market value, because most properties aren't going to sell in a given year. So we're going to review sales and make some assumptions based on the variables in our model to come up with our assessed values that are going to generate an assessed value. And absolutely, I mean, that's the purpose of the appeal process. If a property owner disagrees with their value, they can come in and meet before the board, and we can hash out those disagreements.
So Derek is a property owner here?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Hi. How are you?
The property owner, would Mr. Vidal like to come up?
Yes, I am sure he would.
Thank you, Derek, for explaining some of that.
Of course.
Thank you, Derek.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You have a beautiful house, sir. I said, you have a beautiful house, sir. Thank you.
My name is Pat Vidal, and I live at 3926 Forest Park Circle. And I'm appealing both the land value and the building value of this property. Being as how you've been talking mostly about the building value, I believe I'll start with that.
Yes, sir.
If you would look, if you'd skip the map, it's on page 2. I'll get to that when I talk about the land value. But if you go to page 3 and 4, exhibit 2, what I did was I scoured the neighborhood and I came up with 22 comparables to my house that were story and a half or two-story houses with finished basements, 4 bedrooms, three and a half baths. And they have different qualities that range from good to excellent in one case. And what I did was I looked at what the assessed building values of those houses were in dollars per square foot. And those assessed building values are presented in the far right column of Exhibit 2. Now, as you can see, the assessed value of my building is $252 per square foot. This is just the building, not the total assessed value, but just the building's assessed value. The comparables assessed values range from $171 per square foot to $236 per square foot. Okay, so as you can see, all 22 of these comparables have a lower value per square foot than my building. That's what made me think my building's assessed value was too high and not fair. If you look at the column that's under the heading quality, you can see that they range from excellent all the way down to good. The goods are on page 2. Comparables 1 through 7 have a superior quality to my house. And as you can see, most of them have either 3, 4, or 5-car garages, while my house has only a 2-car garage. Still, my house's value per square foot is higher than these superior houses. There are 6 comparables, number 8 through 12, which have the same quality as my house. All but one have a 3-car garage, while again, mine only has a 2-car garage. The average of those 6 houses is $215 per square foot. Now, because my house only has a 2-car garage, you would think its building value would be a little less than $215 per square foot. But all of these comparables also have slightly greater total living areas than my house. So I will concede that that would allow them to realize some economies of scale
So for that reason, my house might have a little greater value per square foot than them. But anyway, so if their average was 215, and you take into consideration my, my inferior garage, but their superior total living area, I figured my house's value should be somewhere around $220 per square foot. And that's how I came up with the figure that I came up with for its value.
Chairman.
Commissioner Hadcock.
Now we can discuss it, we can get into this now, or I can go on to my land value if you want me to.
Sir, just a question for Derek. So
Yes, ma'am.
we were just talking about square footage, and he's using square footage.
Yes.
Can you explain basically based on the square footage, you took that in consideration, but there was other factors. So, Mr. Vidal is saying square footage, but what other factors do you take in the equalization besides square footage?
And one thing to consider is quality of construction, and Pat's laid it out well. Mr. Vidal has laid it out well on his spreadsheet. In Exhibit 2, comparables 1 through 7, those are all superior quality of construction to his house. His house is very good minus. And with that, I mean, just looking at these comparable sales, I mean, they range in size, it looks like, from about 3,000 square feet to 3,900 square feet.
So if you're
So
listening
all
to,
of these are about 1,000 square feet bigger than his house. So, I mean, they're gonna have a lower per square foot dollar figure just because of what Pat mentioned with economies of scale, even if they're superior in construction, being 1,000 square feet plus bigger than his, that's gonna make a difference.
okay, so why is he's saying because of square footage, construction, some other stuff, Mr. Vidal why is his at the value it's at? What is your bottom line and how did you come up with the total of 587.6 with the land? His land is 85, that looks actually about average for the land. And then the 502, 200 was based on what? How many baths, how many?
Based on comparable sales in his neighborhood and market area. And one thing with Mr. Vidal's comparables, and I'm sure, I mean, Pat could explain more. I'm not sure if all these are sales or if we're just looking at assessed values for comparison purposes. But when we look at our values, we're going to consider sales of similar properties, and that's why when someone from our office presents to the board, we lean hard and talk about comparable sales as opposed to comparing assessed values, because sales are going to drive our values, and sales in the Carriage Hills neighborhood and West Rapid market area determine the assessed value of $587,600.
But he's doing it by square footage again, but that's not how we figure, how we do assessed value and equalization. We put it into, we look at that, but that's not the only factor we use.
Right, yeah, we're gonna look at, again, the other
All
things
the
I
other,
mentioned.
the other
Yeah,
comparables,
right,
okay.
yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
Commissioner
Pat?
Roskinek.
I think what Pat isn't using comparable sales, he's using comparable properties that are assessed. And that's why we call it the Department of Equalization. If we find properties that are assessed lower than his that are inferior, there's something that we need to look at, and I think that's Pat's case here. He's not saying these sold for 220, these sold for 217. He's just saying there are properties in my neighborhood that are superior, and they're being assessed lower than mine. So they go up or his go down is the way that works.
That's correct. That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm just asking to be assessed fairly compared to how the other houses are being assessed. The assessed values may not be their market values.
Right.
And it may not be what these houses would sell for, but
That's what I'm
I
saying.
want to pay my fair share of taxes,
Right.
but I want to be assessed fairly also.
But if you're talking square foot, that has changed as well if you're selling your house and stuff instead of assessing it, right? now that market has changed on per square footage for houses and building. So if we're gonna do square footage, are we gonna do it on, what you built your house for, or what they're being built for now for assessed value? Or are we just doing it what you paid?
I want to be assessed just as the other houses are being assessed, considering, if they have the same quality, if they're the same house exactly and, and vary just in size or something.
Well, that's what I mean, Mr. Vidal. If you're going by square footage, are we going by square footage? Are we going by how we assess? Or are we going by square footage? Because square footage has changed for building, if I'm correct, than what it was today. So if we're selling your house, that's a different price than what we're assessing your house. So,
Yes,
so square
yes,
footage might be a little bit different
it would,
consideration.
yeah, a house,
Yeah,
houses today, if I understand what you're asking, houses today are selling for more per square foot than they did last year.
yes,
But that's that's not how they're being, that's not their assessed values.
right.
I want to be assessed fairly compared to how other houses are being
So
assessed.
what he was saying, sir, and that's why I said, he takes the square footage, but he also does other comparables that make equalization or assessment a little bit different than appraisals of square footage and stuff like that. So if you put all that into one factor, that's how he gets where he's at. He doesn't just do square footage.
No, he's using sale values. He's using market sales.
And what you have in your house and how
Yeah,
your
see,
house is
there's,
built.
there's nowhere on his chart where he's showing assessed values. Is that correct?
On the comparable
On your
sales.
comparable sales chart that
Or
you've,
yes, that's correct. That doesn't have the 2022 assessed values on our comparable sales chart. If you want that information, I'm happy
It's a lot
to
higher.
provide that.
It's a lot higher, the assessments this year on those comparables, sir.
the sales are a lot higher than the assessed values.
I think the assessed values, most properties have went up considerably, sir, on those properties that you have for next year.
Yes, they've gone up also, but they're still much lower than mine.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And that's my complaint.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Roskinek.
when I was on the other side years back, I won many cases proving inequities in assessed values. I didn't have to say, this is what I think the market value was. I simply had to show that there's a discrepancy between the subject property and comparable properties that were being underassessed. As I said, there's only two ways to really correct that based on the information that Pat provided. Either all those other properties should be assessed and go higher so that we're equal, or lower Pat's where we're equal. But that's the nuts and bolts of this whole thing.
Chair, may I comment?
Yes.
There is a state statute that says when the Board of Equalization finds an inequity, that you are supposed to raise the properties that are too low rather than lower the one that's too high.
Correct.
We can find that statute if you want it.
I totally understand that, yeah.
In reviewing Pat's information, I'd like to point out for very good minus quality properties on his information, values range from 654,000 to 528,200. That's houses that are the same quality as the subject. However, they're bigger, and the subject property being smaller has a lower building value than houses of the same quality that are bigger. And so what that shows to me is that, and just my opinion, is that we're right in line with where we need to be with market value for the subject property. And another thing to consider with all of Mr. Vidal's comparable sales and his property as well, the same sales, same methodology, they were used for his neighborhood to determine his assessed value as they were for all of the other properties, that he mentioned. So that's another consideration when we're talking about inequities and along that line of thought is, the same method, same sales were used to determine values for all these properties.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Roskinek.
let me get this straight. Are these improved sales or are these just properties that you're trying to show what the assessed value is?
Mine?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's,
Are they?
yours.
No, they're just properties
Right,
that
they're
are in
not
my
sales.
neighborhood that I pulled the assessed values from Equalization's information sheets on, just to see, well, is my property being assessed fairly compared to my neighbors? And on a per square foot basis, it is not.
And normally, based on the economy of scale, when you build a 50,000 square foot warehouse, it's going to cost you less per square foot. When you build a 10,000 square foot warehouse, you're going to pay more just based on the economy of scale. So Pat's main living area being less than these others, that should actually go up instead of down.
Yes, and I agreed with that, and when I took the average of these very good minus houses, I raised it because of the economies of scale.
Sure.
Chairman, I have a motion.
Commissioner Adcock.
Just to withhold the 587.6 on this property.
The motion is what?
587.6, I think is what Derek has it at. 587.6, sorry.
Motion is to hold the property value, uphold staff's recommendation of 587.6. Is there a second?
May I talk about my land value?
Just a minute.
Okay.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Got a second? Okay. Commissioner Laster, you want to?
Yeah, I'm still kind of, some of the stuff that I'm listening to everything here, I am interested in hearing a little bit about, at least from the equalization office, about the land. How did we come to that last year to say that it was 73,800? And his explanation here, I just kind of want to hear from equalization about, we appealed, last year he appealed it, we said 73,800. And the community he's talking about hasn't changed, and I would like to hear some more information on that.
Sure, okay. And I'll go back to last year's, this county board, I believe the board changed it to 73,800, and Pat, you'd have to correct me if I'm wrong on that.
That's correct.
And so that was the action done by this board, and it was different from land sales in the land model that were used to determine the initial assessed value, which last year was around 94,500, I believe. And so this year, the assessed value for the land was $85,400. And that figure was changed by the Rapid City Local Board of Equalization to 76,900. And so land sales, we're going to review sales of similar properties. So it's going to be land sales in Carriage Hills. And Carriage Hills, it's unique with land in the sense that there's not many lots left in Carriage Hills. So land tends to sell well up there, and there's some other amenities to take into account, such as view, various lot sizes, that side of things. And the difference between last year to this year for the subject property was based off of land sales, where there was a reduction from the 94,500 to 85,400 was based off sales. And in that Carriage Hills neighborhood, Mr. Vidal's property was one of a handful that was changed to that 85,400. That's due to it being lower down, I'll say downhill from Corral Drive and some of those other properties up on the top of Carriage Hills Drive that have some of those amenities that his property does not have.
Chairman, does he have, what was I gonna say, have any comparable sales, like not assessment, but sales in this area?
For land sales,
Just property, land and property?
where I mean, improved properties are gonna be the 5 comparables, I mean, on the handout that I
Those,
provided.
those were assessed values, not sale prices, right? Do you have any sale
Those were
prices?
sales.
Okay,
The properties I handed out, those were all fairly
okay, your
recent
properties were
sales.
sales and his were assessments.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I, I can answer your question. Last year, I argued that because my lot was at the bottom of Carriage Hills and within 200 feet of Wonderland Drive, it had the same elevation as most of the Wonderland Drive lots. It had no view like most of the Wonderland Drive lots. And therefore, I argued that its market value would be more like a Wonderland Drive lot than a Carriage Hills lot at the top of Carriage Hills. And that is what you agreed with. And that's why you voted that its value should be 73,800. That was the value that an 0.75 acre lot was being assessed for last year. This year, Equalization did not change any of Wonderland Drive's assessed land values. Okay, they did, however, decide to change mine back up. They increased it back up. So I'm just asking you to stick with the decision you made last year, that it should be assessed the same as the same size Wonderland Drive lot, which would make it 73.8.
Did y'all change any of the Wonderland Drives property values, just out of curiosity? I just want to confirm.
Where, yeah, as far as I can tell, land values did not change in Wonderland, in the Wonderland Drive neighborhood that borders Carriage Hills. And the reason for that is bare land sales. Wonderland Drive, it's a pretty well established neighborhood, so if there aren't any or if there are very limited land sales, it is difficult to justify and defend changing land values.
Mr. Chairman.
Land value.
Commissioner LaCroy.
You know, I remember this one from last year, and it's gonna go up, Mr. Vidal, from every year. I don't know how many years you've been appealing, but, you know, I've been up in that area quite a bit doing some work and so forth. And I think sometimes, boards make a decision to get it off the table, sometimes. They make compromises and, because the debates go that way. But, you know, quite frankly, I think this is a fair assessment for your property if you look at the market the way it is now and what it's gonna be in the future. And so I'm gonna support the motion on the floor.
I agree with you totally, but I, for the life of me, didn't understand why Equalization didn't take the Wonderland Drive lots and increase them this year. They left them the same. And my lot is right there next to those lots. I'm 150 feet from a lot that's assessed at 73.8.
Yeah.
And they want to assess me at 94.9 or something like that.
85.4.
And that's, but quite honestly, if you look, if, you know, knowing what the real estate market's doing, all those Wonderland Drive lots should be raised. If you want true market value, they should be raised.
Thank you.
But you didn't raise them. So my lot's just like theirs. Again, I'm asking to be assessed the same as the lot right next to me is.
Mr. Vidal, but we lowered you last year and then we kind of did it in between this year, between the last years that we lowered and then the higher that was 94.
No, I
So,
understand exactly
yes,
what
sir.
they did. Yes, ma'am, I understand that.
Sir.
I would like to ask Derek to explain how I have all of these superior quality houses that have 3, 4, and 5 car garages. and their building values are so much lower than mine. How do you explain that? That can't be explained just by economies of scale. The difference is way too large.
I mean, I would argue that looking at the assessed building value, you look at very good and excellent quality houses, their building values range from 694,000 to 817,000. This is $180,000 more than the assessed value of the subject property's building value. And when we look at per square foot costs, I mean, those are the differences that I've touched on again and again. Is there different qualities? I mean, there are larger houses. I mean, we're looking 3,000 to 4,000 square feet above ground compared to 2,000 square feet above above ground. So that when you look at the per square foot cost, you have to take into account different quality of construction, condition, and that's something that I don't see on Mr. Vidal's information, is when these houses were built and the condition that they're in. That all plays into value, and that's difficult to quantify into a per square foot basis, just because there are differences there that that drive value.
So are you saying my house is that nice of condition? It's that much nicer condition than all these other comparables?
Your house is, I mean, it's very good minus, it's smaller, and with a building value, I mean, it's garage square footage. I mean, that's gonna be included in your building assessment.
I understand that.
I mean, yeah, you're
I
well aware of
understand that.
What it just comes down to with price per square foot doesn't tell the full story when you're comparing different sizes, qualities, and year built condition, that side of things.
But I just, I just can't buy it that these are houses with superior qualities, superior garages, and most likely superior conditions. I mean, these are the cream of the crop of my neighborhood
Want to call the
that you're
question?
comparing mine to. And mine is so much higher than
I've
these.
had the question called. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Aye. Nay. So I think it was 3-2. Might have to call the roll.
You two were,
Okay.
no, you want me to do roll call? Or no?
Uh,
You two are
if-
no, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Thank
so.
you. Thank you, Mr.
So the
Vidal.
vote was 3-2, so it stays at 587.6.
Two property owners left. Mr. Allard is next.
I just have a handout for the commissioners here. I'll wait for Deb to get back.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Okay. My name is Trevor Abernathy. I'm a senior appraiser with the Equalization Office. And the property we're discussing here primarily is tax ID 8470. There is another property that was included in the appeal as we were dealing with a mobile home as well. That is 8003441. So what we're looking at here, the assessed value of the 8470 is 394,500. This is 116,700 for the land and 277,800 on the improvements. I'm recommending no change to this current assessment. So what this is,
I will note that Mr. Allard did contact me in November, I think it was, and expressed a concern over the land value on this parcel because he was looking at some other similar properties that were mobile home courts that were assessed in the area, and we had his land at a different amount. So I will note that I did lower the land by 86,500 from last year to be more equitable due to the topography and the floodplain on this parcel affecting what he can do with the mobile home court. So I did take that into account. I did request an interior inspection to address the owner's concern, and there wasn't really an answer given, but there was a video that was provided. And I guess, Deb, if you want to run that video just so we can all be on the same page to see what we're talking about here. And we have this mobile home court. It has 7 lots. What we're seeing here is lot number 7 with the mobile home. So this is the actual mobile home that has also been included in the appeal. And this has been set next to a stick-built improvement. So we're going to see a walkthrough real quick of the mobile home here. And then we have approximately like a 3-foot doorway that goes into the stick-built improvement. And then the video goes back out. So
Plus they're attached?
they are attached by that 3-foot doorway there, and
Okay.
they sit next to each other along a 20-foot wall. So this property in whole is it's mobile home court, 7 lots. It has 1 stick-built residence, 2 sheds, and 5 carports. The property sits along Rapid Creek and has 3.11 acres. 1.45 acres of this lot has been valued as drainage land for the limited commercial use due to the floodplain, as I alluded to earlier. It limits the number of income-producing lots that are possible in the mobile home court, and as we know, a typical mobile home court will use all possible land to generate income. But there's only about 1.66 acres that are limited to this use on this property. The stick-built residence on this property had previously been assessed with a mobile home that sits on Lot 7. And a recent inspection of the exterior of the property indicated that that residence had been significantly remodeled and additional living space was added. The large increase in value to the tax ID 8470 is due to the remodel, the increase in living area, and moving the value of this structure from tax ID 8003441, which went down 76.47%, to tax ID 8470, which went up 43.93%. So I just say those percentages just as data points. Please note that the value that was added to 8470 is larger than what was removed from 8003441. So the total value given to the stick-built residence is $202,400. The stick-built portion of the residence contains 1,104 square feet of living, 1,896 square feet of basement garage, and a 792 square foot attached garage. There is the 14 by 76 mobile home. That's a separate tax ID, separate assessment that is placed next to the stick-built improvement along a 20-foot wall with that 3-foot interior doorway connecting the 2 structures that we saw in the video there. This does not constitute a reason to assess the stick-built structure as part of the mobile home, but this was previously assessed that way. So last year we had this stick-built improvement assessed at $35,000. It was determined to be unreasonably low based on the improvements that currently exist. So the interior data of this is really not completely verified. The measurements, including the depth of the garage, interior living area, and basement, are estimated based on exterior measurements, historical data, and conversations with the owner. So I have not been in this structure. I had noted upon exterior inspection that the residence has a stable 8 sign in front of it. And I do want to be clear here that I'm not indicating that Mr. Allard has added another lot that is being rented that would violate the conditional use permit that he has. I'm just saying that this stick-built improvement should not be valued under a mobile home and should be assessed with the land. And we have $202,400 on that. The owner has also expressed some concern about the carports that we have assessed on this property. He's contending that they are personal property. I'm assessing them as real property. And I have a little bit more information on that, depending on where that conversation goes, but we could definitely hear what Mr. Allard has to say.
Questions before Mr. Allard comes up? None? Mr. Allard?
Yeah, my name's Dave Allard. I live at 12350 West Highway 44. I'm owner occupied, living in Lot 7. For 49 years, see, I bought this place in 2015, and before that, Dorothy Lee had it for 44 years. And for 49 years, this has always been assessed as an addition to the mobile home. I even have a loan with the bank, and they do not recognize this structure as being part of the land for my loan. It is an attachment by law to the mobile home. If you want to change the rule, I don't know. That's all I know is for 49 years, it's just been always valued that way. I guess you'd use the Marshall Swift
Yes.
as an
for
addition,
cost
and then that's
saving,
how
yeah.
you'd assess that structure, because it is an attachment. I don't know, back in 1973, apparently she got a building permit for an addition on the mobile home, and it's always been that way. So I don't know how you change the rules. And as far as the carports, they're all under 144 square feet. They are not permanently anchored to the ground, and they're movable, which means they cannot be real estate. What is not real is personal. It's pretty simple.
Mr. Chairman,
No, Astor.
question about those carports. You said they're not anchored to the ground. Do you provide, does the mobile home park provide it for them, or do they
No, they're
install
just
them?
something I built, and they're personal property. To me, they're personal property. I move them around. Since Trevor's been up there, I've moved several of them. They're very easy for me to move. I weight them down. They're not anchored, and they're under 144 square feet. They don't even require a building permit. So I don't know how that can be real estate. And they're not platted. They're not marked on the plat. So I don't know. You tell me. I consider them to be personal property, all 5 of them.
Mr. Chair.
They're small enough.
Commissioner Oskinek.
So Dave, I've pretty much been on the same page relative to you and your carports. But the state's attorneys, to their defense, it's not a matter if it's anchored down, it's the use that it's being used for. It can be stick built, it can be a mobile home. There again, what is the use? I think that's what the county's looking at. What's the use and what's the value of that use?
Because it's a carport, I mean, it could be, I could make them into just a place for a picnic table.
I'm just saying that's the way the county looks at it.
Correct. And if it's it could be a 12 by 12 structure with all the walls and the roof on skids. And what's the purpose of that? And then that's not being used, that is not being assessed as real estate.
Chairman,
Commissioner Adcock.
so Trevor, I thought if you anchored, and maybe Lloyd knows more about that, I thought once you anchored it down, then it became permanent. It became permanent part of the structure, but if it wasn't anchored, then it could be movable, that kind of thing.
There's a lot of different factors when it comes to mobile
Maybe Trevor
homes.
knows.
When you're talking about the financing, if it's over 20 years old, the financing different. The newer years, they have to have piers put down and strapped, which is anchored.
Carport?
No, I'm talking
Talking
mobile
about
homes.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about the carport.
No, I think it's pretty clear on those carports. Ron's worked on that heavily for the last 2 years, and that's what the state's attorneys are saying.
Okay.
But
I guess I heard differently than that, and I haven't talked to the state's attorney lately, but even in the city, I thought once you anchored it down, it was called permanent, and that was a lot different than something that could be, I mean, not that those can't be moved, Trevor, but maybe you know different in equalization part of how you equalize it based on anchored or not anchored.
Yeah, so I can address that a little bit. And This is just reading from Codified Law 10-4-2, and I gave you a copy of it. It's this form here. What you're referring to is affixing it to the land. So part of that statute says improvements to land and all rights and privileges thereto belonging, consisting of items permanently affixed to and becoming part of the real estate. The term permanently affixed refers to economic life of the improvement rather than perpetuity. One thing to note farther on down in that codified law, it says for assessment purposes, a structure is anything constructed or erected from an assembly of materials which requires a permanent location on or in the ground. And there's also some other information as far as court rulings and things that I could get into, but really it comes down to the intent of that structure. And the intent for these, they've been labeled with the same lot number as the mobile home. The intent is for these to be here and provide cover for parking for the tenants. One thing to note as well, just since we're on the topic of the carports, he has indicated they're 144 square feet. Well, that is or under 144 square feet. That's measuring the poles and where those are located. But per Marshall and Swift costing manual, we have to assess the area of coverage for a carport. So I'm not measuring by where the poles are. I'm measuring by what it covers because that's what a carport is for.
Right, so Trevor, it's in there, plus it's bigger than 144 square feet?
Correct. If you include the covered area of the carport is larger than 144 square feet.
He's measuring my roof.
Oh, hold on, David. Do you have to get a building permit if it's over 144 square feet?
So currently, as far as I understand it, there is a CUP violation with planning and zoning regarding these carports because they have told Mr. Allard to get a permit. That has been closed but is unresolved. So as far as all my discussion with planning and zoning, they would require a permit for a carport of this size, and they would not go based on where the poles are. That's my understanding.
I guess that's where I was going, is that it was over 144 square feet, sir, plus it's anchored, so it becomes permanent, plus it's past the code of which we do carport, sir. So it's a whole different ballgame, and then they assess it accordingly based on that law.
What law? See, 43-1. -2, class of property. Property is either one, real or immovable, or personal or movable. And also 43-1-3, real property and personal property distinguished. Real or immovable property consists of land, that which is affixed to land, that which is incidental or appurtenant to land, and that which is immovable by law. Every kind of property that is not real is personal. State law says if it's movable, it can't be real estate. That's just about as simple as you can get.
But David, it has the other law also that says over 144 square feet.
You'd have to get a building
attached.
permit.
Yes, and so those need building permits.
I don't need building permits for these because they're under 144 square feet. They measure the base.
I have two follow-ups. One, correct me if I'm wrong, if you put a shed that's 100 square feet, it can still be assessed on a property, even though it's movable. Is that correct, Shannon?
Yeah, we're assessing the market value, so we don't care if you get a building permit or not.
Right.
Mr. Allard here has not got a building permit for these. That's an issue with planning and zoning. We're gonna put it on the tax roll. Yep.
But my point being is he's saying if it's under 144 square feet, then my point is you can get a 100 square foot shed, put it on your property. It's movable. I can go out there and move it with my forklift or whatever. That would still be on the tax roll if it's on your property. That's
just like a deck.
okay. So that's the first thing I wanted to clarify. The second thing I want to clarify is this, Trevor, is this one of the carports we're talking about? And if it's movable, can you tell me how it's movable? Because what I see is I see posts in the ground.
So as far as I can tell, the wooden posts sit on top of the ground. They used to have not really T-posts, but kind of gardening posts that were anchored into the ground and then screwed into the posts. Those were since removed and 6 foot of concrete block put on top and strapped into the wood posts so it wouldn't blow away.
Gravity.
That's, okay. I just want to understand how they're mounted. So they're mounted to be affixed to the property so they don't blow away, so fixed.
Yes, and I would like to note, just as an example as well, is an example of one of these carports that was built very much the same way on 23021 Thunderhead Falls Road. This property was previously owned and sold by the appellant here, and it was built on site while it was in his possession. When this property sold, I put a copy of the listing that was on there. The carport was noted in the listing. It's sold with the real estate, and it's still on site.
But that was permanently anchored. That was not just sitting there. That was actually permanently anchored to the ground.
David, you do
That's the
some,
difference.
that's very nice how you do your work though, David. I mean, those are nice. So
Other questions from the
you do
board?
good work.
But they're movable, and I consider them personal.
Is there a motion?
I'll uphold the assessor's value.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to uphold the assessor's value. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
So my addition is now a house. My addition to the mobile home is now a house also.
What we did is we upheld the assessor's.
Okay.
Derek, do you have another one?
Yours and mine. That's okay. Mine's screwing all the way over here. You're up again, Derek. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon now. The subject property we are now talking about has a tax ID of 27108, and it is located at 701 Lemon Avenue in Rapid City. I am recommending that the board uphold the assessed value of $166,100. The subject property, it is owned by Robert and Sharon Mayer, and it is located in North Rapid within city limits. Initially, our office sent out an assessed value of $189,800. Mrs. Mayer contacted our office. An interior and exterior inspection of the property was completed. That resulted in a reduction of value to $166,100, the value that I am recommending. And this adjustment was due to the interior condition of the home. The subject property, it is 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and it is 1,112 square feet, and it is over a crawl space. There's a 616 square foot attached garage that was built in 2001. The house was built in 1950, and it is on a lot that's 0.16 acres. The comparable sales, they range in year built from 1902 to 1956, and above ground square footage ranges from 1,125 to 941 square feet. Comps 1 through 3, they do have basements, and comps 2 and 3 have minimal finish of 70 and 799 square feet respectively. And then comps 1 through 4, they all have detached garages ranging in size from 336 to 784 square feet. And the 5th comparable sale has an attached garage that's 325 square feet. The comparable sale prices, their sale prices range from $150,000 to $201,250. And when considering comparable sales, I tried to focus on houses that have above ground square footage, and I tried to minimize basements due to the subject not having a basement. And the most comparable sale, I consider it to be comp number 5. It is similar in size to the subject with a smaller attached garage and deck. And the interior condition is better than the subject property after reviewing listing information online. However, the exterior appears to have less updates than the subject property. But the interior condition, that could possibly explain the higher sale price compared to the subject property. And one thing I wanted to touch on in relation to the subject property is that percent increase. The value from last year to this year, it did increase substantially, right around 46%. And a part of that reason is due to our overall housing market that we're dealing with. And the other part of that is what's called reappraisal. In our office, we do reappraisal projects each summer in neighborhoods throughout the county. And what that consists of is we go door to door through the neighborhood, double checking everything from exterior measurements to interior condition, bedroom, bathroom count, if a property owner is home, just to make sure that condition is correct for properties in the neighborhood. And I know the North Rapid neighborhoods, they were reappraised in the spring and summer of 2021. So that percent increase that you're seeing, a part of it's the housing market, and the other part's due to reappraisal, where what our office found is some properties in North Rapid, they were previously undervalued. And the subject property could possibly explain this with the 2021 assessed value being right around 113,000. And again, I'm recommending that the board uphold the assessed value of 166,100.
Mrs. Mayor, if you would like to present your case.
I don't have a big case to present, but we've lived in the house since the year 2000. We bought the house for 60,000. Now it's increased in value by 300%, it seems like. And it seems like a lot. He did reduce the price a little bit, which is good, because when I got my notice, it said 67% increase. And so I kind of looked at my income and I looked at things around and I thought, my goodness, none of this stuff is increasing at this price. And so anyway, I was very concerned with the price being so high on my property. It's a small house. It's a one-bathroom house, which of course most people don't like one-bathroom houses anymore. And it has no basement on it, and the land is only 7,000 square feet of land. It's a half of a lot. I think there's not very much space there. It's good when you have to do lawn mowing because you don't have a lot to lawn mow, but it's not a very big lot. But anyway, we just wanted to appeal this because my husband and I, of course, are retired, as you can tell, I'm sure, and our income doesn't increase very much. And so these prices look to us like it's going to be an awful high tax bill for us. Since we've lived in the property, as I said, the assessment values have went up every year. When in 2008, I happened to pull an assessment out and it was valued at 59,000 at that time. And again, I know assessments, sometimes they're 90% or 80, every year they're a little different. So I know that, but anyway, I just wanted to appeal to see if there's something we could do. I guess I think the house is probably worth 150 or less, but again, I don't sell houses, so.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Roskinek.
Is it Sharon?
Sure.
Okay, and I'm done. Yes, I'm not.
Okay, so you weren't here earlier today, and there's a lot of people that are really scared because of their assessed value going up so high. But do you recall, what we tried to tell these folks is that just because your assessed value took a major jump, well, probably to reflect the value of the home, I don't think you're gonna see your taxes go up that much from, that's just my opinion. I don't think your taxes are gonna go up that much from last year because the county cannot increase our budget by 3% plus growth. And if there's such an increase in valuation, assessed valuation, I think it's 13.8 billion, something's gotta give. And so if the mill levy goes down, hopefully your property taxes that you see won't be that much different. If that's any relief at all.
I hope so too.
I do too.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner LaCroy.
Well, thanks, Sharon, for coming here and explaining how you're feeling about this, because you're absolutely right. Back, number one, your house looks very nice for being on Lemon Avenue, and you keep it up. That's good. Plus, there's been some renovations on that street from years back. But I also want to say, when you mentioned the prices of what you paid for it and what it's worth now, and I work with my wife's mother-in-law. If she sold her house now, she can't find nothing to rent to get them by for what the cost of the taxes and utilities are. So I just it is a good investment. If something happens to you guys, I think the 166 is fair, because I've got one house over on North 7th Street, not far from there, that's only 760 square feet. That's probably assessed about what yours was. And I did the same thing. I paid like 35 for it, so.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening to us. And like I say, it's sad when we have to have such a high increase all at one big lump sum.
It is.
So Derek,
That is not good. So thank you
Commissioner
very
Adcock.
much.
so they haven't been appraised for a while, so you raised it then, and then you raised it because of market value too?
We're right, yeah, the percent increase that Sharon's looking at is due to reappraisal and market increase.
So if she went from 113,000 to 166,1, how much is she paying in the difference in taxes then?
Differences in taxes?
Yeah, so she pay how much for 113,000, how much is their taxes a year, and
About
166?
2,400, I think our tax was last year.
For a $113,000 house?
Around that, it was around 2,000, I think. I don't have the number right here, so
Sure.
I'd have to look it up.
Ron
Yeah,
might know
you'd
that.
have to bear with me, I'd have to do some
Okay.
figuring.
I thought it would be more like 12 to 1,300, but maybe I'm wrong. It could be around 18.
I think ours is 12 to 13 at 110.
What'd you
That's
come up with, Ron?
No, I'm just looking at the mill levy.
Oh, okay.
So if your taxes were 2,000 and it was assessed at 113, that would be like a 0.009% mill levy. So that's what I calculated.
So what's
looking at dollars.
166? Looking at money. How much money she's going from 113 to 166.
I'm thinking I've got some properties that are valued at like 124 that I was paying 1,200 or 1,300 a month on.
That's why I said, so she going up 500
I mean, a
bucks?
year, sorry,
year
not a
or-
month.
477 is what I got.
She's going up
I mean,
$477?
I don't know that it's gonna go up. That's just, if I took the difference times the 0.009% mill levy, it's $477. But we don't know.
Yeah, using existing.
Those are just a
mill
lot of
levy, yeah.
assumptions.
I like to
Motion.
go by the assessed value or the sale as well, but, Derek, I understand, it's got to give one or the other. To me, we did both on them, and I understand assessed value, because we've been talking about that today, but, 46.99% is pretty high, even if you're not, elderly. So,
Right, yeah,
to me, guys, there's got to be a give a little bit on some of these areas that if we're going 60% and like you said, Lloyd, some years is doing that, but some of mine have went up considerably with inflation and, equalization stuff, and that's good, but we're talking on Lemon Street, we're talking 46.99%. I'm okay with some of that percentage going up at 25 to 30%, but, I'll just tell you, now I understand what they're talking about with the $500 is $500 for somebody's income. So what we're saying is, ma'am, you can go sell your house now and make more money off of it. So then you can go live somewhere else,
Pay
right?
more.
Right. So to me, I don't know. I'm not in, I don't know what we do with some of this stuff like this, but, we're trying to make affordable housing in one sense, and then we're kicking people out with percentages high enough for them to go out. I know, Deb, you're shaking your head. To move out of their house because it's not affordable anymore. I don't care what people say. $500 for some people is a whole lot of money when you're on certain incomes. So, are we into affordable? And what are we going to do? Or are we talking about we're going to have to start doing subsidized housing? So, to me, I'm into those 25, 30. Once you get pretty high, I think we're doing a disservice for what we're trying to do in this community with affordable. So there's either one or the other for me. So that's my opinion.
There is a program out there, I don't know if you,
I'm aware of it,
okay,
but
okay,
I don't qualify because I
okay,
make 10,000 too much money probably.
Yeah,
okay.
But I think over the years, you're gonna see that number increase.
yeah.
Probably,
They,
but
they,
then I'll
they-
probably still always be a
that's
few
been,
bucks
they
over.
work on that every year, and so,
Next year, it goes up quite a bit. The legislature changed it.
Changed it.
yeah, don't give up, because
Well, I never give up, but
good for you.
I would encourage you to get a hold of me January of 2023 here, Sharon, so we can talk about that senior freeze program. It could be beneficial for you at
Thank,
that time,
Should
thank
go
you,
into
Ms. Sharon.
effect July 1,
July 1st.
yeah. Is
District
there a
Chair.
motion?
I'm gonna make the motion of the 166, 100.
I've got a motion, is there a second? I'll second. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So we got a 3-2.
Yep.
what did you,
Motion carried.
Thank you.
what did you
Upheld.
say the price was?
It's upheld, it was upheld.
The
That's
ones,
166-1.
166, the same price he has on this
Yep.
your thing?
Yep.
Okay.
it was 89.8, if I may, Mr. Chairman. The reason why I followed up on that, Ms. Sharon, is so that it wouldn't be an every year thing, you know, this, right now it's 166, next year, hopefully they'll stay or not keep jumping. We make it less than their recommendations, by following year, it's gonna jump back up, plus the 3%. And we end up, you come to visit us every year.
Trusted, thank you.
Is there any more business to come today before the board? Declare the board in recess until next
The 20th.
Wednesday at 8:30 a.m., April 20th.